Okay, let's call this meeting to order. I think we've got enough members now to get a quorum. Would you please call the roll?
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. As a, I'll take it if you want. Let's see, as a preliminary matter, I have been advised that, well, actually, I can tell you, Senate Bill 1208, which is my bill, I'd like to strike that. Senate Bill 1212, Senator Newman's bill, at the request of him, we want to strike that one. And I understand, Senator Marsden, I've been told that you want to strike 1043. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is the bill.
Pet shops, procurement of dogs.
That is correct, sir. We were unable to come to agreement, and so
Okay.
therefore, based on your request, that if we come to agreement, we'll go forward. If we can't, we won't.
Okay.
There's the deal.
All right. At the request of the patrons, then, can we get a motion to strike Senate Bill 1043, 1208, and 1212? Motion probably second to strike that. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oh, we got to record that. Sorry. Please record. Call the roll.
Eight ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, thank you. That's just in case anybody was here interested in those three bills. Let's see, Senator Chase, you're first on the list, I believe.
Thank you,
And-
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I've been requested to be brief here since we've already had our press
And
conference today with the governor.
Chase, would you tell us the bill number, please?
Sure, it's Senate Bill 1743.
And just as a background for some folks, there appears that there's some agreement
Yes.
on some terms in coal ash that the governor and others announced this morning. Senator Chase had filed this bill, and she wanted, and we want to give her the courtesy to go ahead and present that. If you could just kind of highlight what this
Yes.
bill does, and maybe you might even want to suggest what it does other than what they're going to do.
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, this bill is actually one that is mirrored by the North Carolina coal ash effort cleanup. I actually would like to actually bring up a former member of the legislature of North Carolina, former majority leader that led the way in fighting the coal ash and dealt with the coal ash and introduced this bill, which I'm introducing in Virginia. It was the same one that was introduced in North Carolina. And my thought was, why reinvent the wheel when North Carolina has so appropriately taken care of it? Just to give you some highlights.
Well, do you want to explain your bill, or do you want him to explain your bill?
Well, I'm gonna do a little bit, and I'm gonna let him do a little bit, and it's gonna be brief. We're gonna cut to the chase.
Thank you.
So, anyway, one of the differences between this plan, the North Carolina plan, and the Virginia plan is that it does not create an independent, non-member coal ash committee. We're not doing that. There is gonna be a 20-year prioritization and closure plan. All plants are to go to dry ash by the end of 2017. And what I like, Mr. Chairman, is that there are 5 specific site risk levels. There's a high risk, a moderate risk, and a low risk to kind of prioritize which ponds need to be given priority. There is no rate recovery for ash bills. There's a moratorium on rate cases, and it keeps the groundwater and the surface water protection provisions in place. With that, I'm going to cut to the chase and allow former delegate, majority leader, Mike Hager to come and finish presenting the bill.
I only have one.
Senator Chase.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for having me. Members of the committee, thank you.
How are you? Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. It's a quick trip, 6 hours if you're not too bad.
I feel a little bit different being in Virginia's legislature than the North
I
Carolina.
do feel
ones.
like the poor cousins of Virginia, to be truthful with you.
Don't feel that way. We're glad you're here, and we appreciate you taking the time to come.
Senator Chase's bill is fairly simple. It really does three major issues. And I wrote them down because as a politician, I didn't want to talk too much. So it provides a framework to safely and environmentally close the coal ash ponds, and really the ones that present the most danger to the drinking water of Virginians. It provides the ability to monitor and assess the current condition of coal ash ponds as requirements to address unpermitted discharges, which was a problem in North Carolina. And lastly, but certainly I think more importantly, it provides a minimum guarantee that Virginia coal ash goes into Virginia concrete for the Virginia economy. It doesn't solve North Carolina's problems by using North Carolina ash to fuel the Virginia economy. It fixes the Virginia economy using Virginia ash into the concrete. Very simple bill. I think it builds on the 4 years we've had to deal with coal ash in North Carolina, and it fixes some of the shortcomings we had in North Carolina.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your leadership on that in North Carolina. Hopefully, it's going to help us in Virginia as well.
Good. Welcome. I had a great senator to work with.
We agree.
Thank you.
Any questions for the witness?
Yeah, I have a question.
Senator Peterson.
I appreciate your being here and your knowledge about coal ash, and I especially appreciate the fact that we're going to reclaim it and reuse it. I talked with people from my district today. Our concern is, as you know, the last couple of years, we've had a lot of conversation about what's recoverable and what's not recoverable by our utilities. And is this going to be subject to the State Corporation Commission? Is there going to be any type of review as to whether or not this is recoverable? Is there going to be a return on equity? Who's going to pay for this?
I can answer that. And what I will tell you will probably happen, we will probably follow the governor's bill on this, to be honest with you, with Senator Serville, myself, Senator Dance, and others on this bill. And here's the deal. With the rate recovery, in the North Carolina bill, the way it was written, it said that if the utility had committed negligence, then they would have to pay for it. But if they didn't, then the ratepayer would pay for it. In my understanding of everything that's gone on, Dominion has not committed negligence. They have followed all state and federal law regarding disposal of coal ash. And so therefore, as you mentioned, the State Corporation Commission would oversee the rate. There won't be any freezes. We're not, you know how I feel about that. But the ratepayer will pay no more than $5 a month in their bill for a certain period of time, and then it goes away once it's paid for. But it is a ratepayer expense.
Further question, Mr. Chair? And I'm not casting aspersions at anybody,
Good.
but the people that decide whether or not as Dominion is negligent should not be people receiving campaign contributions from Dominion. Have I made myself clear?
Well, I stand with you, and I have not received campaign contributions from Dominion since I first ran for office.
And I know that, and that's why I'm looking right at you, because I know that.
Yes.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you.
Does that take care of you?
That's all I got to
Senator
say.
Let's see. We're in an interesting situation. So if the bill reports, and I suspect it will,
Yes.
it needs to go to Senate Finance. But if there are folks who came to speak in support of your bill, I would like to give them an opportunity to speak to it briefly, and likewise to others. So if you are here to speak in favor of Senator Chase's bill, please step up.
So I'm Dr. Holman White. Thank you for the opportunity, Senators. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I am a clinician, physician working in Nova Fairfax Hospital in Virginia. I'm part of a group called Virginia Clinicians for Climate Actions. We're looking at this issue from the health perspective. So when you think about your family, when you think about your children, you know, when you think about chemicals such as lead, mercury, arsenic, chromium, are you gonna, would you ever think about letting your loved ones near any of those items, any of these toxic substances? And the answer is no, the resounding no. So when we talk about this legacy issues of Virginia, where we have the coal ash problem, we're seeing evidence of these substances leaking into contaminating drinking water. And we're talking about folks that living close to those areas having a 1 in 50 chance of getting cancer. So we're talking about 100 people, and out of those, 2 people will get cancer. So yes, there's also the economic impact of things where one cancer patient will probably, from the start of diagnosis to either cure or them passing away, costing at least $1 million. So when we talk about whoever that's going to pay for it, my concern is to make sure that we look at the bigger picture for the concern of the health of our patients.
Well, thank you very much.
One thing I did also want to bring up is when we talk about climate change, all these superstorms that were rare events before are now becoming common issues. So in a state such as North Carolina, we've actually had coal ash ponds that were overflowing, leaking these chemicals directly around, so causing an exponential amount of harm in the region. Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. Anyone else who'd like to register their support for the bill? Alternatively, is there anyone who'd like to speak in the opposition? If there is not, then a motion's appropriate. To Senate Finance. Okay. Is there a second to that? Senator Peterson seconds that. Motion properly seconded to report the bill and re-refer to Senate Finance Committee. Clerk, please open the roll.
Eight ayes, 0 nays, 1 abstention.
Thank you, Senator Chase. You've been a staunch advocate for this. We appreciate your work on it.
Thanks for moving it along. Thank you.
Let's see, Senator Wagner, I know you've got another committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a very, very brief bill, 1388. It deals with Chesapeake Bay watershed. A few years ago, we asked to include the Lynn Haven River and the Little Creek watersheds into the overall James River pollution load diet, if you will. Now we're asking that be rescinded, and the rationale behind that, Mr. Chairman, is that we are investing heavily in, all of us in the Hampton Roads area, into what's called the SWIFT program, where we're actually taking water that's been treated and into drinking quality from our sanitation, pumping it back into the aquifer. And I know, Mr. Chairman, you're very familiar with the aquifer. So with that reason, we're asking to go back to what we used to be about 3 or 4 years ago. That's all the bill does, Mr. Chairman.
And so you don't want to be calculated in the total maximum daily loads, or maybe I don't understand that.
We want our own with the Bay. We could go back to the way we were with our own with the Bay. Okay? We're part of the James River, and now we're going back as a separate with this action of this bill.
All right. Any questions of Senator Wagner? You have folks that would like to speak in support?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Bob Mathias, City of Virginia Beach. We did move these 2 watersheds out of the Chesapeake Bay into the James River watershed for management purposes several years ago with the onset of the SWIFT program, where we're going to take tremendous amounts of treated sewage water, re-inject it into the aquifer, which will probably counteract the subsidence issue and plus give us a lot of really good credits on the Bay cleanup. That's why we've asked the Senator to put this bill in again.
Okay. I think I understand it a little better now. I didn't understand it so much when you were explaining it, Senator.
I explained everything, Mr. Chairman. It's clear as a bell.
Senator Wagner's my seatmate, and he has what we call the mumble method. And if you don't explain it too thoroughly, people just go, okay, that sounds okay. I think I have it now. Is there any opposition to this, which I don't suppose there is? Yeah, seeing no opposition, is there a motion? Motion properly seconded to report the bill. Clerk, please open the roll.
Ten ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, Senator Wagner.
Thank you.
Senator Sturdivant. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator DeSteph is ahead of you. I apologize. I'm trying to get used to these screens. Yeah, I see you, John.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, how are you doing today? What a fantastic day.
Nice to see you, Senator DeSteph.
Good to see you, sir. We have
Thank you
Senate
for
Bill
bringing these simple bills to the
1573.
committee.
You're welcome. We have Senate Bill 1573 with offshore oil and natural gas, and we've got a bunch of speakers on this as well, Mr. Chairman.
I can imagine.
So I'm going to have them line up while I start to talk a little bit about the bill, if we could, for the speakers. And Mr. Chairman, what this does is Virginia Beach, we have the coastline of Virginia. and the entire ocean front, and we want to make sure we protect that from oil and natural gas exploration and drilling. So what we're asking is for in the Commonwealth's waters to restrict exploring, drilling, extraction, development, production of natural gas or oil.
Senator DeStefano,
Yes, Mr.
I
Chairman.
apologize greatly, but can I ask you to pass this by briefly? Because I promised Senator Cosgrove, he's got a coal ash committee too, and I have to apologize to you.
Got
May
it.
we
I'm-
pass
I'm
this by
happy to do so.
temporarily?
Happy to do so, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Senator Cosgrove, I didn't see you sitting there until just
That's
then.
quite all right, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your courtesy. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, this is a bill you've heard before, but I think it's more apropos than ever now. This is Senate Bill 1046.
Tell us what your bill does.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. I'm here once again to plead with this committee to do the sensible and scientifically responsible action and place the menhaden population in the waters of Virginia under the management of the Virginia Marine Resources Commission. This group of scientists and commissioners manage every other species in the Virginia waters, and menhaden should not be segregated into a single class that is managed by this General Assembly. You know, I can't remember, I've been here almost 18 years, and I can't remember a time where we as a legislative body have been asked to evaluate and take action on the day-to-day management of this all-important food stock fish. My bill would merely and only move the management of menhaden and the population from us, uninformed and scientifically lacking politicians, and have it managed by a body whose responsibility is to do exactly that. The bill does not impose quotas. It does not impose new regulations. It does not hurt jobs. It's not an anti-union measure. It's just common sense. In fact, it requires that any action to establish any moratorium on menhaden fishing has to be authorized by us, the General Assembly. Omega Protein, which is the largest fisher of menhaden, is owned by a foreign company located in Canada and has been able to influence the decision-making or lack thereof here in the General Assembly for many years. Now, much of their product has been taken out of Virginia waters, and that actually ends up being shipped back to Canada to feed farm-raised salmon, which is one of the least ecologically friendly ways to raise fish. Mr. Chairman, this bill is strongly supported by the Chesapeake Bay Commission, the Saltwater Sports Fishing Association, our localities in Hampton Roads, and many other environmental and sporting organizations. We are on the cusp of being declared out of compliance by the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. And I believe that if we do not take a positive action on this bill, they will probably take draconian actions as a compact. Mr. Chairman, the people of Virginia expect us to do the right thing, not the politically expedient thing. They expect that we will protect Virginia's assets by evaluating the science by scientists, not elected officials, lawyers, bankers, engineers, and others. We have no marine technical background skills. And Mr. Chairman, I know personally fish tremble at the mention of your name.
Thank you.
But that's big fish, not little fish like menhaden. Let's do the right thing for the Bay, for our environment, for our Virginia citizens, and give oversight of this fish as we have given to all other species in Virginia waters. All other species. The menhaden should not be separated out as a single source to be managed by us. It's a critically important fish that feeds mammals, sea mammals, waterfowl, stripers, bass, you name it. And Mr. Chairman, you've heard this bill before, but I think we are in perilous waters here, if you'll excuse the expression, because if we don't take action, action will be taken for us. That's my bill, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove, thank you. And I listened to what you had to say, and I've had some familiarity with this, dealing with this issue year after year and serving on the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. You're not asserting that the General Assembly is mismanaging this or that the science indicates that it's overfished or any of those things. You just think, as a matter of policy, it should go to VMRC.
I would say yes and no to that, Mr. Chairman. I know we're not managing it properly because we don't know what the heck we're doing. We are not scientists. we don't have that data that we can sit down with on a daily basis and evaluate.
Are you suggesting that VMRC take a scientific lead in this?
No, I'm saying that VMRC should take the science that's available and evaluate it just like they do for every other organism that they manage in Virginia waters. Menhaden should not be segregated out as a separate entity. I don't understand why we would do that.
But doesn't NOAA do the stock assessments regularly? And don't we see that stock assessment regularly? Doesn't VMRC currently do catch and bycatch counts on almost every fish that's caught almost every day of the season? And don't we have all of that information at our disposal?
We may have it available, Mr. Chairman, but I don't think we do anything with it.
We may just have to disagree on that.
Well, I can just tell you that there are many, many organizations that believe that the menhaden is being overfished, that stripers are thin when they're being caught, and that's a tremendous sports fish, as you well know. And when they're opened, they have baby crabs and not menhaden, and the same with many other species. Now, that may happen sometimes anyway, but if the menhaden is there, that food fish, that stock fish, keeps all the other organisms in the bay healthy. Now, Omega has these boats, as you well know, that go out and they bring these fish in by the tons and tons. And of course, they have airplanes overhead that tells them where to fish. And there's nothing illegal, nothing wrong about that. But the amount of menhaden that's being taken out of there, I'm not sure whether it's the right amount, it's the wrong amount. We don't know because we are not qualified, and I'm including myself. We are not qualified to make that decision. But we have people that we employ in the General Assembly, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, whose job it is to do exactly that. And we're not letting them do their job, and we're not doing it for them.
Thank you. Any questions of Senator Cosgrove? Do you have folks that would like to speak in support?
I do, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
if the folks who are in support would please register their support briefly.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to be real quick. Senator Bill Steph, Virginia Beach. To sport fishing to Virginia Beach is a $1.2 billion industry. And the menhaden are the little fish that attract the big fish that have all the trophy tournaments in Virginia Beach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Chris Moore, Chesapeake Bay Foundation. First, I want to thank Senator Cosgrove for bringing this issue up again. As you all are, I hope are aware, Chesapeake Bay Foundation has long supported this action, moving management of menhaden to the Virginia Marine Resources Commission. We do believe it is the rightful place to manage this along with all of our other marine species in the Commonwealth. They've done a great job. You look at the resurgence of the oyster catch in Virginia, you look at the resurgence of blue crabs as of late. We think we can do a good job managing this resource there as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bob Mathias, City of Virginia Beach. We've had this item in our legislative package for 4 or 5 years now. The senators, both senators have given you a very good explanation of the reasons why we think this should move to VMRC. And I just want to second the very good arguments they've laid out. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Steve Atkinson. I'm with the Virginia Saltwater Sports Fishing Association. We also very much agree that this needs to be done. We need the expertise of the VMRC. Frankly, if you look at the data, the harvest of menhaden in the Chesapeake Bay is down over 50% in the last decade. We're also seeing, as you heard earlier, Mr. Cosgrove mentioned, we're seeing a large decline in striped bass, and we don't think that's a coincidence. So we urge you to take this action. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Zachary Sheldon. I represent the Nature Conservancy. I just want to echo everyone else's previous comments and express our support for this bill.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Pat Calver, Virginia Conservation Network. We do not have an official position on this, but we do believe that it's important to bring Virginia back into compliance on menhaden and hope that some resolution to that can be found very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. No one else likes to speak in support? Are there those that would like to speak in opposition to the bill? Come on up. Don't be shy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
My name is Monty Deal. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Omega Pro Team, also a native Reedvillian and a retired military officer and one of 5 generations of my family who have worked at that plant in Reedville. We oppose this bill primarily for two reasons. The first of all, the movement to VMRC. VMRC is not a scientific body. It's made up of 8 political appointees, none of whom, as I know, are actually scientists. They are not bound by having to abide by the best available science. They do not have to. In fact, as a business who invests tens of millions of dollars every year in long-term capital investments, to have to worry about every 30 days when the VMRC meets, that 5 people, 4 if one is out sick, 5 people can essentially vote you out of business. It's very difficult to run a business that way. Additionally, as I mentioned, they do not have to abide by science. They could be used to rubber stamp recommendations made by the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. And we have seen in the past that that political body will do just that. In fact, the other part of this is about adopting the current recommendations by the ASFMC on the so-called Chesapeake Bay cap. That cap started in 2006. It was never about science. It was about politics. And in fact, in 2008, when the then executive director, Vince O'Shea, testified before Congress, when asked about the Bay cap, he said, and I quote, "It was in response to a political problem. There was not a science basis for the cap." It got readdressed again in 2013, when the cap was lowered by 20% with no scientific support. And the then Menhaden Development Plan, the actual scientists who advised the ASFMC, stated the annual Chesapeake Bay harvest cap is not based on scientifically qualified harvest threshold, fishery health index, or fishery population level study. And in fact, the chairman of the technical committee, the chairman of the scientists who do the stock assessments and advise that body, named Jeff Brust, stated there doesn't seem to be any benefit to the Chesapeake Bay cap. There is no observable biological benefit. You know, to add insult to injury, in November 2017, that body cut omega proteins harvest by 41% in the Chesapeake Bay, based on no science. In fact, when
we time these things, and the time is, and there are folks, I think, who also want to speak in support behind you.
At the same time they cut Virginia 41%, they increased Maryland and the Potomac River Fisheries Commission's harvest threshold. I mean, we should be more insulted than anything else by that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, members of the committee, A.J. Erskine representing Virginia's bait industry. We pack menhaden for crabbers, and we grind menhaden into chum for sport fishermen. We're opposed to the bill.
Thank you.
Yes, Doris Kraus-Mays, president of the Virginia AFL-CIO, and we represent the United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 400 that works there. This is a jobs bill for us. No matter how you look at it. Coming from a rural community myself, and when you only have 1 or 2 industries, and when you cut that, it impacts the livelihood. We have families that are 5 and 6 generations that have worked at the plant and fished in those waters. And this is their livelihood, and I'm standing here to protect those livelihoods, and I would ask that you oppose this measure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tyler Minnick from the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. We oppose this proposal because it could potentially harm the business community, and we have shared our concerns with Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Vassy, Virginia Manufacturers Association. I counted this as my 17th year on this bill. So I think everybody knows where we stand. But just one last thing. We're trying to grow manufacturing in Virginia, and we can't support this legislation, but we do understand the interest. But this is the last man standing. This is literally it. We have no one else. So we want them to grow, and we ask you to pass this bill.
Thank you.
Bye for the day. Thank you.
Anyone else who wants to register their support quickly? Okay, Senator Cosgrove, you want to finish up?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. These are the same comments that have been made every year. Look, everybody knows this is not going to hurt menhaden fishing. This has nothing to do with the lineage of fishermen that have worked for Omega or other companies for generations. This bill is just a bill that makes common sense. And when we say we care about the environment and we care about what the environmental groups think, then we ought to act accordingly. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, it's time to do the right thing. You're right. It's been 17 years. Every single year we come back because it's a problem. As it was stated, yes, the cap was cut here in the Chesapeake Bay because the population had drastically declined. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, let's do the right thing for the Bay. Let's do the right thing for the environment. And let's put this under VMRC where it belongs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Senator Cosgrove. And just briefly, I want to, because I have spent a lot of time on this issue over the years, and some of us believe we are doing the right thing, believe it or not. We've got abundant science that's done by NOAA that indicates the stock is not overfished. They're not doing much fishing in the bay anyway because they tend to do better out in the ocean, and so they go out there to do it. They are monitored almost daily by VMRC and everything they catch, including bycatch. And there simply is no indication whatsoever that they're overfishing. And for some of us, you know, I'm from the Northern Neck. I grew up there, and I understand how important 300 jobs are. Now, that's not saying if I thought they were injuring the ecosystem, I wouldn't stand up and try to do something about it, but they're not. And there are many of us who believe if you were to send this to VMRC, that'd be the beginning of the end of that industry. And so we respect you for doing what you believe in. Please respect us for doing what we think is right as well.
Mr. Chairman, I absolutely respect you. In fact, I think you ought to take it a step further. Let's deregulate everything. Let's just, VMRC, let's just tell them to go home and not do anything.
Mr. Chairman.
So I'm just saying.
Senator Peters.
And John, you and I came into the House together.
We did.
You and I came into the House together. I was actually we had a subcommittee, a task force on this issue back in 2003.
Right.
And we heard everything for hours, and we made a decision, and nothing I've heard has caused me to change my mind. And I respect the opinions, but it is the same opinions every year. And to me, for whatever reason, you know, I think the status quo is the status quo. And for the reasons articulated by Doris, I think that's important, that this is people's livelihoods. And so I'm going to move to PBI.
Okay.
If there are no other questions of Senator Cosgrove, is there a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. The motion to PBI? Motion properly seconded to pass the bill by indefinitely. Clerk, please open the roll. Report the vote.
12 ayes, 1 nay.
All right, Senator Cosgrove, you have one other.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, but looking at this bill and the attitude of the committee, I'm going to strike that bill.
You're going to strike 1049?
Yep.
All right, at request of the patron, the bill be stricken. All in favor? Can you open the roll, please, on that, Chad? Thank you. Thank you, Senator Cosgrove.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
Yes, but it didn't need it because of PBI. I know, but maybe they didn't want their vote. Okay. Senator DeStep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's try this again.
Chad, I did not vote on flag.
So, Mr. Chairman, what we're trying to do is, in the waters of the Commonwealth and our territorial sea, we're trying to restrict the exploration for drilling or extraction, development, production of natural gas or oil, and also restrict the construction of infrastructure specifically associated with offshore oil or natural gas leases in the Atlantic Ocean on the beds of any waters of the Commonwealth. And furthermore, Mr. Chairman, we're trying to support, we do want to support federal efforts to examine the feasibility of offshore wind energy being utilized in an environmentally responsible fashion. And then lastly, sir, the bill repeals Section Code 67-300, which is the code that basically says that the Commonwealth will support and assist with exploration of oil and natural gas more than 50 miles off the coast. Mr. Chairman, in Virginia Beach, we rely on our 15 million visitors every year. We rely on having clean beaches. We rely on having a clean view shed and visually appealing waters. And Mr. Chairman, we really rely on having the opportunity for our visitors to surf, to swim in unencumbered waters. Mr. Chairman, that's the catalyst for this bill. I'm carrying this for our city council. I'm carrying this for our restaurants, for our hotels, and for our business owners in Virginia Beach who want to make sure that we can protect our beaches, our coast, and our ocean. Mr. Chairman, I've got a bunch of speakers lined up today that will express this in much better terms than I ever could.
Senator Steph, just so I understand, this is a prohibition on offshore drilling and I guess a temporary moratorium to study windmills offshore?
No, Mr. Chairman, it's
sum it up?
actually a restriction of exploration and drilling and extraction for development, production of natural gas or oil, and also,
Senator Steph, hold on. I understand you have a substitute.
oh, I'm sorry.
Do you want that distributed?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to first distribute and adopt the substitute that I've been talking to for the last 5 minutes.
Motion properly seconded to adopt the substitute. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Pass that out.
I apologize, Mr.
I thought-
Chairman Proficient.
What's different from your substitute and your original bill to ban offshore drilling and give a study on windmills?
Well, we have a little softer, more acceptable language for some in the substitute that's in front of you. And the changes, Mr. Chairman, are on line 58 through 62, which bans the exploration, drilling, extraction, development, the construction and infrastructure for offshore oil and natural gas leases. Then on line 87 and 88, it supports federal efforts to examine the feasibility of offshore wind energy being utilized in an environmentally responsible fashion. And then on line 107, that's the section that repeals the current law, Mr. Chairman, which says that we'll support any, the Commonwealth will support any drilling and exploration of natural gas and oil more than 50 miles off the coast of Virginia.
Okay, so it's a softer ban?
It's a softer ban,
Okay.
more gentle, softer
All right.
ban, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions of the
And we believe a
patron?
couple more people are happy with the way we've written it this time.
Any questions of the patron? All right, you have folks who'd like to speak in
Yes, sir, I do.
support of this?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bob Mathias, City of
Yes,
Virginia
sir.
Beach. City of Virginia Beach has actually been on both sides of offshore oil and gas. We had a task force a number of years ago, and we came out in favor of offshore oil and gas exploration. After the Horizon incident, and actually more importantly, a map that the Department of Defense put out 2 years ago where they basically showed that every area off the city of Virginia Beach, off the coast of Virginia out to 200 miles was incompatible with their mission. We have two big industries in Virginia Beach: tourism, which doesn't work well with oil balls rolling up on the shore, and the military. If you start impacting their mission, they're going to move bases elsewhere. So for those reasons, council has gone on record as being opposed to offshore oil and gas. I also want to mention I'm a member and former chairman of the Virginia Offshore Wind Development Authority. We are moving forward in concert with Dominion Power and Ørsted, used to be a Norwegian gas company. And we're going to start construction of 2 test turbines 27 miles off the coast in the next year.
Okay.
And I think that'll probably lead to a commercial wind farm, which is going to be very good for the economy of Virginia. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Chairman and
Good afternoon.
Senators. I'm Karen Forget, and I'm the Director of Lynn Haven River Now in Virginia Beach. So I'm here representing our 10,000-plus members across the city of Virginia Beach. And I also serve on the Norfolk Environmental Commission, so I'm here in that capacity also. I think you all received a list of the 20 towns, cities, and counties in coastal Virginia that have passed resolutions in opposition to offshore drilling. This is a very important issue for us, one that we have been working on for 5 years now. The environmental risks may be really self-evident, but what might not be quite as self-evident is the economic risks to our coastal communities. You're going to hear from people representing the tourist industry, which is hugely important in our region, from the aquaculture industry, and most importantly, maybe you received a letter from Admiral Quigley representing the military's position on offshore drilling in Virginia waters and the reasons why the military sees this as really problematic for their operations areas off our coast. We are, unanimously opposed to seismic testing and moving forward with any offshore drilling activities off the coast of Virginia. And we need the support of the General Assembly to fight this fight in D.C.
And I don't mean to be rude, but there are others who'd like to speak.
I'm
And
done.
we do time these, so
Yeah,
if
I'm
you could
finished.
give the others a chance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to be very fast. First off, thank you so much for your time and expertise. My name is Diana Burke. I'm the Executive Director for the Virginia Beach Hotel Association. I represent about 9,000 hotels in Virginia Beach. I brought you a little party favor today. Many of you have probably seen these around your desk, but the reason I share this, of course, we are in support of this bill. We are opposed to offshore drilling. It's funny, if you look at our 2019 directory, the first page says that we're beachy clean, and we'd like to keep it that way. The second page then talks about that we've been voted one of the 10 best American boardwalks. So I'll leave that there just as a I guess, a resource.
And again, you all are out of time, but if you could wind up, and
Sure.
just so others could register their
Absolutely.
support.
One sentence I'm going to read from our opposition letter from back in 2015. Our board stated, our decision was not reached lightly as we understand the need to diversify our state's economy. Although diversification of our economy is of great importance, we cannot in good conscience, support a potential industry if it in any way compromises the well-being of an already proven industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you would like to register your support, please step up and do that. Now, I'm talking about the folks who are waiting behind you. Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman, Jay Ford, Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We support this bill. We thank Senator DeSteph for bringing it forward. We lend ourselves to some of the other comments you're going to hear, but I would like to specifically point out that this bill has unintended consequences if nothing ever were to happen. Obviously, if there was a spill, that would be a catastrophic impact to our Atlantic and Chesapeake waters. But if nothing ever were to occur, there would still be potential impacts to both our aquaculture industry, the operation capacity of our military, and
Jay,
NASA
if you could
wildlife.
just wind up
Yes, sir. Thank you
briefly.
very much.
We do time these, and we try to keep it to the time limit, but I don't want you to get cut off if you're waiting in line. So if you want to say, I support the bill, please step up and say you support the bill.
Mike Osterling, Executive Director, Shellfish Growers of Virginia. Clean water is our life. That's all I need to say.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, Chairman and Senators. Thank you, Senator DeSteph, for bringing this forward. Well, it cuts my speech real short, so
And I'm
I'll briefly
sorry,
tell
but
you.
I'm sorry, but if you'd like to just
yeah,
let us
my
know
name-
you
my name's
register your
Laura
support, we
Huber.
appreciate it.
My husband and I own a restaurant. I also am a member of the Virginia Beach Restaurant Association and also a founding member of the Business Alliance for Protecting the Atlantic Coast. We represent 45,000 businesses from Maine to Florida and 500,000 commercial fishing families.
And you support the
And
bill?
we support the bill, and we
All right.
support offshore wind as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Stephen Carter Lovejoy with the Virginia Sierra Club, and we support the bill.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is James Shidabaktiari. I'm here representing the CCAN Action Fund and our 30,000 plus members around the Commonwealth. I would like to let everyone know here that we support the bill.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Pat Calvert, Virginia Conservation Network. More than 100 nonprofit organizations, many of what you just heard, also agree that this is a very good bill. Thank the patron for bringing it.
All right, thank you. If there's no one else that'd like to speak in support, are there those who would like to speak in opposition?
Oh, we don't have any opposite. I'm just kidding.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Rob Shin, representing the Virginia Petroleum Council. We are opposed to the legislation because we think it's premature, particularly to take such a drastic action. The concern you served today, some of which are legitimate, we believe can be answered once more detailed testing, analysis, and studies are done on the issue in the future. We don't know what our energy needs are going to look like in the future, and there may be very compelling reasons why these resources should be developed. The legislation, even the substitute, would prevent infrastructure from being developed on the beds of the Commonwealth in the Atlantic Ocean. So if that did take place, and I think we're talking about most likely the actual development would be the Outer Continental Shelf, 70 to 100 miles offshore, but Virginia would likely be denied the ability to compete for the potential jobs, investment, and tax revenue coming from the industries associated with the resource. We do know that from looking at other states and other areas that there is potential for a significant number of high-paying jobs and billions of investment. So we ask you to please oppose the bill and wait until more information can be gathered so we can make a fact-based decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Nicole Riley with NFIB, representing about 6,000 small business owners here in Virginia. When we've balloted our members on this or surveyed them, they have supported the offshore drilling for gas and oil, along with a lot of other energy factors. For small business owners, energy costs can be significant depending on the type of business that they have, everything from delivery trucks when gas prices go up to a manufacturer who has a lot of electricity issues. And so we would support the bill. Oppose the bill. Thank you.
You oppose the bill. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Tyler Minnick from the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. For the reasons previously given, we oppose the bill.
Okay. Anybody else wants to speak in opposition? All right. If not, are there any questions, or do you want to wrap up, Senator?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peterson.
I have a question. Exactly what it says, the territorial waters of the Commonwealth. What are we talking about? Is that how many miles offshore?
3 miles offshore. Mr. Chairman, Senator Peterson, that's 3 miles offshore.
Okay, follow-up question.
Senator Peterson.
So basically, I'm assuming no one's going to drill within 3 miles of the shore. So what are we physically talking about doing, or not doing, I guess, to be more specifically?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Peterson, we're pretty sure that within the first 3 miles, there's no oil or gas anyways.
Right.
However, with that said, we also don't want somebody to put a well 5 miles offshore, 10 miles offshore. And that's why we have on line 61, where it restricts the authorization of construction of infrastructure specifically associated with offshore oil and natural gas leases. And the reason for that is Virginia Beach, our military, our tourism, military investment, the Navy, and what the Navy's, where the Navy put their restrictions and everything. You know, we want to make sure we've got clean water, a clean view shed, and to be honest with you, in Virginia, we have the only access to the ocean in Virginia Beach, and we want to protect that. We want to protect it for our tourism, we want to protect it for our citizens, for our residents, for future generations.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Does that take care of you? I have an interest, and I don't know the answer, so I'm going to ask you, Senator Steph, why is this not a federal issue?
Good question, Mr. Chairman.
Anything we do is not, why isn't it going to be preempted by federal law?
I believe we're focused on the 3 miles of the Commonwealth waters, and I believe
but your
the
bill goes
federal-
beyond that. It goes beyond that in regarding infrastructure and other things in the Atlantic Ocean, which are beyond the territorial limit of Virginia water.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I believe we kind of set the precedent back when we put Section 67-300 in place, where we actually supported it for anything greater than 50 miles out. And with the Navy as a large of a customer as we have and supporter in Virginia Beach, there are a lot of restrictions. And as the gentleman from the oil and gas said, the intercontinental shelf is roughly 67 miles out, and that's where we would have it. So we just don't want big pipelines running up on the beaches of Virginia Beach.
Okay. There are no other questions of the patron. Is there a motion? There's a motion properly seconded to report the bill. Hold on. Does this have to go to finance? I'm sorry, I thought it did. All right, motion properly supported to report the bill. Clerk, please open the roll. No, I can't remember. I have people's proxies. Thank you.
Chairman, members of the committee.
7 ayes, 8 nays.
Thank you, Senator Steph. Is there any other motion? No. I'll let it to go. Okay.
Do you want one? Mr. Chairman, I would move to respectfully pass bill by indefinitely.
Senator Black seconds that motion. Motion properly seconded to pass the bill by indefinitely. Clerk, please open the roll.
Nine ayes, 6 nays.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Sturdivant, you're next on the list.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good
members of the
afternoon.
committee. This is Senate Bill 1761, Mr. Chairman. This
Okay,
was,
Senate Bill 1761.
This is a bill that, in drafting, I figured was a local government bill, but I'm very pleased to have it before this committee because while we have many good environmentally friendly and conservation-friendly senators on local government, I know we have just as many, if not more, here.
Flattery will get you everywhere,
Yeah,
Senator Sturdivant.
that's what I'm hoping. There is a substitute bill, Mr. Chairman, that is going to be passed out that
All
I'm
right,
hopeful.
Senator Stanley moves the substitute. Senator Ruff seconds it. All in favor, please say aye. Aye, opposed, no. Substitute's before us.
I'm hopeful that the substitute will remedy many, if not all, of the concerns that I think several of the stakeholders had with regard to the original legislation. And I'll explain what this bill is about and explain the changes in the substitute. And essentially, this is a good neighbor bill. It's a good neighbor piece of legislation. And this is something that I didn't know and have done a little bit of research on, but Virginia is one of the top importers of out-of-state trash in the entire country. I know that many of you who have been here longer than I have dealt with those issues in the past, but that is something that I don't think we should be real proud of, that Virginia is a significant importer of out-of-state trash, especially from the Northeast. And where it oftentimes goes are to landfills in our rural areas, in our districts, in the serene and beautiful countryside of Virginia. And so this is a landfill bill, but it's a good neighbor bill as well. And this is what it does. It essentially says that if a county or locality wants to open up a landfill in their county, but they want to do it near the border of their county and another county, that they need to have a dialogue and engagement of that next door neighbor county that's going to be impacted by that landfill. And here's a specific example of why this is important and why it, I would submit to you, is necessary. I represent, in addition to parts of Richmond and parts of Chesterfield, I represent all of Powhatan County. And the main thoroughfare through Powhatan County is Route 60. It is a 2 lanes in each direction that runs the length of Powhatan County. It's a 4-lane divided rural highway, and it connects us with our friends and our neighbors, Cumberland County, to the west. And our friends in Cumberland are in the process of working to develop and open up a pretty sizable landfill, which is perfectly fine and appropriate and understandable, and it's a way for them to raise revenue and perfectly within their rights and understandable. But what they want to do is they want to open up this landfill virtually on the border between Cumberland County and Powhatan County. And the second piece of it, which is really what is the genesis for this bill, is that the primary route of access to this prospective landfill in Cumberland County is Route 60 through Powhatan County and Chesterfield County as well. Route 60 is called Midlothian Turnpike in Chesterfield County. And so that's the genesis of this bill, is there are estimates that if this landfill opens in Cumberland, it's going to result in about 250 trash trucks a day driving that length of Route 60 through Chesterfield County, through Powhatan County, just right over the border
into our neighboring county of Cumberland, dropping off the trash, and then going back to pick it up elsewhere. And that's obviously resulted in a lot of consternation in Powhatan County, as I'm sure you can imagine it would in any of your localities. Anybody in here who represents a county that is connected to another county that you may not represent is at risk of having something like this happen. And so what this bill seeks to do is pretty simple. It says if an application for a new solid waste management facility permit is made, the application has to include a certification from the governing body for each locality within a 5-mile radius of the facility, other than the locality where the facility is going to be placed. And so in this case, we would have that certification included from Powhatan, as it's within 5 miles of where this Cumberland County landfill is going to be located.
Senator Sturtevant,
Yes, sir.
what does certification mean?
I think it would be a certification from the Board of Supervisors that this is something that they have agreed to and consented to.
And staff, can you all, what does the term certification mean in this bill?
Mr. Chairman, that language comes from earlier in the bill, a number of different places. Paragraph 1 and paragraph 9 uses the term certification. I believe it's relatively open to interpretation, but something that whatever the governing body decides in their action will grant the approval.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Peters.
And I think I understand the issues. I assume in most counties, you'll probably need a special use permit to open up a landfill.
Mm-hmm.
That would probably be what certification would mean.
A rezoning or special
Or
use permit,
rezoning.
depending upon.
Mr. Chairman, in the county where the landfill is going to be located.
Okay, further question.
Senator Peters.
Can you name any other activity in order to get a special use permit or rezoning that you require the approval of the next door jurisdiction?
I'm not aware of any as I stand here today. Haven't researched it, but again, I think that if we take a step back, and I recognize the point that Senator Peterson is making, Mr. Chairman, what we are talking about here are massive trash trucks. Estimates are 250 each day of the week going back and forth on roads within Powhatan and Chesterfield County, clogging up traffic, creating a hazard, tearing up the roadway. And this is all for the economic benefit of our friend and neighbor in Cumberland. Meanwhile, Powhatan and Chesterfield are left out in the cold and really at the mercy of what their neighbor a couple counties over want to do.
I've got a follow-up question to Senator Peterson. So, and I get that this upsets your constituents. I understand that. But how would Powhatan feel if every time they wanted to do an economic development project that maybe wasn't a landfill, they had to get Cumberland's permission?
And Mr. Chairman, I would submit that this is a narrowly tailored situation where we're talking about landfills and landfills only, and that I think there is an objective difference between having hundreds of trash trucks driving through the main thoroughfare of your county every single day for time immemorial to wanting to do some sort of economic development project in your county.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Marsden.
Thank you. Senator Sturtevant, you referenced on the border. How far from the Powhatan County line is the facility?
I have someone from the county and an organization that has been working very closely, and she would be able to probably provide a more accurate distance than I can, but I would just tell you it's virtually on the border.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, one more
Senator
question.
Marsden.
Is there, you're an attorney, can you think of any other precedent where one jurisdiction has authority over the decisions of another jurisdiction even in a narrowly drawn situation as you describe?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Marsden, it's a fair question, and I can't give you an example of that. As I said to Senator Peterson, I can't give you an example of that as I stand here today. I would just submit to you that when a different situation presents itself, there may be a need to be addressed. And, you know, in a dual enroll state, we tell our localities what they can and can't do every single day down here of session. And we're oftentimes talking about regional cooperation and regionalism. And this is simply a situation where you're going to have an inordinate negative impact on one or more localities because of the decision of a neighboring locality. And what this bill does is simply says there needs to be some negotiation and a meeting of the minds to try to find a solution that allows these two neighbors or three neighbors next to each other to reach an amenable resolution. And actually, in this case, Chesterfield would not be involved because they're not within 5 miles of the Cumberland landfill. So this would be one other party that would have to be involved. Obviously, wherever one of these landfills might fall, that would depend on how many other parties would have to be involved. But, you know, at the end of the day, with this legislation on the books, Mr. Chairman, Senator Marsden, I would contend that if the county wanted to open up a landfill and we had this legislation on the books, they might be more willing to have it somewhere else in their county so that they could have full control over it, and that's perfectly within their rights, rather than doing it on the border of a county in my district or a county in your district. Because here's the issue, is there is no recourse for the folks in Powhatan as it currently stands. The supervisors in Cumberland are not answerable to them, and that's why I'm here. Is this is their opportunity for a resolution of some kind.
Okay, Senator Sturtevant, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
I have a very quick question.
Senator McClellan.
So this as written applies to more than just counties. It would be any locality that has a governing body. So that would also include cities and incorporated towns. And I guess, aren't there some cities and incorporated towns, I'm thinking of in particular Ashland, I don't think is any larger than 5 mile radius.
Sure.
So in effect, for some of those smaller localities, aren't you saying you don't just have to get the approval of one jurisdiction? If you're small enough, you have to get the approval of all of the surrounding jurisdictions?
And Mr. Chairman, Senator McClellan, that's right. And if a county wanted to put a landfill on their border and they happen to be within 5 miles of 3 other counties, they would have to go and seek that approval as well. And that's a part of this bill, absolutely. If it would be helpful to exclude cities and towns and have this apply only to counties, I would consider that a friendly amendment to attempt to further limit its impact, because I think the likelihood of Ashland opening up a landfill within its limits is unlikely, but I recognize the concern.
All right, Senator Sturtevant, I think I've got a sense of this bill. Do you have folks who'd like to speak in support of this?
I do. I've got Victoria Rano who
Okay. We'd like to have her come on up and speak in support then.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk. You know, I have served my life protecting the public. Oh, I am. Oh, sorry, I'm taking up time here. I'm with Enough is Enough, Preserve Virginia, and it's a cascade of many different counties. We have united and decided that we needed to have a voice just to preserve Virginia, preserve ourselves from some of the injustices that we feel that are occurring to us without a voice. So I was going to say that I served most of my life protecting the public. I was a police officer for Chesterfield County for several years. I went back to school, got my degree in nuclear medicine, and served the public for 17 years in the hospitals. I currently now have the privilege of parking in the 14th Street parking deck, continuing to provide the public with safety. The not in my backyard is what everybody says, and that is a true statement, not in my backyard. but that goes for the county that is proposing this as well, because they didn't want it in their county, and they put it upon us. And somebody asked about how far this was. It is 500 feet from the Powhatan line, and there's a driveway of a Powhatan resident that goes parallel with this proposed landfill. Our water is at jeopardy, and we have no say, no protection. They're going to protect Cumberland County's water, and they're going to test Cumberland County's water, but they're not going to protect Powhatan's water. We have 900 citizens right on the line. There's a creek that goes through the center of the cell of this landfill, one on each side, and through the center is the muddy Maple Creek Swamp, which goes to the Muddy Swamp, which is the border between the two counties. And the people in Powhatan use that water to not only feed their livestock or drink, give water to their livestock, but also their vegetation of their crops. So there's got to be a way to protect the adjoining counties from what is occurring to this. I want to say that Senator Sturtevant mentioned that there was 250 trucks. That's being gracious. The local trucks will be in that vicinity, but from 6 o'clock p.m. until 7 o'clock a.m., tractor-trailer trucks of 80,000 pounds, 45 tons, are going to be rolling 5,000 tons of trash from out of state, 500 miles around, and it's going to be coming down our 2-lane, 9-mile section, which is, in the state of Virginia, 76th on the list for fatalities. And this is the road the trucks are going to be coming down. There will be no impact to Cumberland. They will.
But
Okay.
if you could wrap
Okay.
up, because I think
Sure.
there are others who'd like to speak as well.
Sure. I would just like to say that I know that there is a lot of issues on, imposing upon another jurisdiction, but I feel that that's what's happening to us.
Okay.
And
Well, thank you for your testimony.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Victoria. And just one further thing, Mr. Chairman, is the substitute. The original bill, I think, was too broad. We had it too broad. It was related to existing landfills and permits for expanding current landfills. We narrowed it to just new landfills.
I think we got the bill. Anyone else that wants to speak in support of your bill, Senator Sturtevant? All right. Are there those who would like to speak in opposition to the bill? If you do, come on up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. My name is Bea Gonzalez with Capital Results, representing County Waste of Virginia, which is proposing the Green Ridge facility in Cumberland County. I'm here today opposed to this legislation, and I appreciate the change in the substitute, but it's still not workable for us. This legislation sets an incredible precedent that would significantly undermine any locality's ability to determine their land activities within its borders. They could pit localities against each other, holding hostage their neighbors' ability to pursue a productive economic development projects that continue to help generate tax revenue, especially in light of Cumberland County's situation. Given this fact, the proposed legislation puts in jeopardy private investment in significant portions of localities along their borders. It should be mentioned that this legislation is not just limited to the private facilities, but would prevent local governments from doing existing facilities as well, which I think he's addressed some of that in the substitute. I also want to tell you that when we talk about Cumberland County, and I bring this up because this facility is going to help multiple counties throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. This is not just a Cumberland County project. Green Ridge has been, and County Waste of Virginia has been working with many localities across the Commonwealth. And when we talk about truck traffic, which Senator Sturtevant and Ms. Victoria mentioned, there's a Luckstone quarry that has 2.5 times the truck traffic that this landfill would have that go from Powhatan into Chesterfield. And Powhatan hasn't complained about the truck traffic going into Chesterfield County. So again, this is pitting locality after this could pit locality against locality. So the prospect of the underlying consequence of this legislation would make permitting extremely difficult and severely limit additional capacity for waste disposal in Virginia, which could amount to skyrocketing prices for localities, businesses, and consumers and residents of waste management services. For those reasons, we still oppose this substitute.
Could you wrap? I'm sorry. There are a lot of folks who want to speak. Yes, sir.
I'm David Meinhardt, Chairman of the Cumberland County Board of Supervisors, and I want to speak in opposition to this bill because not only is it specifically aimed at Cumberland County, it's aimed at one single specific business or industry. It also opens a very big can of worms with this limiting the amount of area in proximity to an additional county that would be limited to not only what the county that is in it is concerned with, but their neighbors. I would like you and Senator Sturtevant knows, take in consideration how much land would be taken out of consideration for economic development if a 5-mile line or area of every county were taken out, subject to what its neighbor wanted.
I think
And,
we
you know,
understand.
I'm looking at
that.
it from the standpoint of, it is landfills today. But what might be the industry or business that we want to aim at next time?
I think we understand.
It's a very deep can of worms.
Right. Thank you for your testimony. Yes, sir.
Thank you,
We're
Mr.
we're out of
Chairman,
time, but
members
if
of
you
the
want to
committee.
briefly register your
I'm Bill
opposition.
Osel. I'm on the Board of Supervisors of Cumberland County as well, and I oppose this piece of legislation. I think it's a poor piece of legislation. As my colleague said, it opens up a can of worms, and even the senator, when he was speaking, said, well, it only applies to landfills today, but there may be different situations in the future that we need to address. Really?
We
Are you
understand.
kidding me? Is it going to be an Amazon type, or is it going to be a Microsoft type data center? Is it going to be something that's in your jurisdiction that may come to your jurisdiction in the future that's not there today? Senator already admitted, could be opened up and do other things. Let me tell you, in Cumberland County, we followed every law, every regulation, not only to the intent of the law, but with the spirit of the law and regulations.
Okay.
Powhatan citizens, including the chairman of the Powhatan Board of Supervisors, spoke and testified at those hearings. Half of those sessions that we had, when we had hundreds of people, half of them were citizens of Powhatan. Their voice was heard. We heard their concerns. We registered those concerns. In fact, we addressed some of those concerns in our host community agreement.
And I'm sorry, but if you would just wind up your remarks, because
Sure.
we've
We
gone
trust-
way over, but we want to let people register their support or opposition.
Understand.
So we appreciate your testimony.
Ultimately, we do appreciate the professionals and the expertise that do exist in the Department of Environmental Quality to
Thank
deal
you.
with the citizens in Cumberland County as well as surrounding jurisdictions, as well as those people in VDOT to handle with those
Thank you.
issues and concerns.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Seward. I'm Chairman of the Board of Supervisors in Sussex County. We have a very large landfill that, quite frankly, if this scenario were to have existed when ours was built, it probably never would have been built. That same landfill accounts for millions of dollars of our county budget every year, so we are very, very opposed to this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris McDonald, Virginia Association of Counties. We do oppose this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Eric Gregory, County Attorney for King George County.
I'm
here on the
surprised
county's
to see you here.
behalf. Shocker. King George County asked me to come and express our opposition to the bill. We appreciate the changes, but still opposed. We have a landfill in King George County, very successful landfill. It spins off significant capital revenue for the county, and it's extremely successful. We are opposed to the bill for all the reasons stated.
Thank you,
Thank you
Eric.
very much.
All right, if there's no one else, Senator Ruff.
Having had the honor of representing Cumberland County for a decade, I am well aware of their economic situation. They are a small county, a small population, but they have to operate the county, they operate the schools. They are not on the beaten path for economic development. And so I would be very concerned about us leaving them in the lurch after they've spent the money of going through the process of public hearings and making sure the property would work. So I really would hope that we would not pass this legislation.
Do you have a motion?
I would move the bill be PPI'd.
Is there a second to that? Is there any discussion? All right, there's a motion properly seconded to, would you like to say something else?
Just briefly
Okay.
in closing, Mr. Chairman, this is not saying you can't build a landfill. It's just saying don't do it in a way that abuses your neighbor and hurts them.
Okay, thank you.
There's plenty of, and this doesn't deal with economic development opportunities, at least outside the context of a landfill. So this is pretty narrowly tailored. Happy to tailor it even more narrowly as the process goes on, if it would be the will of the committee to report it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sturban. All right, there's a motion properly seconded to pass the bill by indefinitely. Clerk, please open the roll. Sorry, Senator Sturban.
14 ayes, 0
You did a
nays.
great job for your area, though. Let's see. Senator McPike, I'm sorry I didn't see you sitting back there. You've got a bill that's all worked out, I understand?
Mr. Chairman.
Or a request to strike it?
Senate Bill 1462. Mr. Chairman, last week you tasked several bills in a similar posture to go by for the week and to have some further discussions. We have a substitute in that regards, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Hanger and Senator moves and Senator Stanley seconds. Adoption of substitute. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
Now, Mr. Chairman, the origins of this bill is to place several sections under the Virginia Consumer Protection Act in relation to pets and animals. This comes and arises out of numerous cases where there were substantiated issues with the sale and transfer of a pet that became ill and died. There's substantial amount of financial loss associated with these as well. The original bill had many more provisions included. This is now narrowly defined.
So this puts the sale of a pet under the Consumer Protection Act, so they can get redress under that, and there's a 2-year, you've got to keep the history certificate for 2 years, is that correct?
It narrows down. It doesn't, if we were to do the pet lemon law, we would have to include 6514. This only deals with 6509. So the misrepresentation of the sale of animals as it relates to the pet shop. So the remaining, I think there are some folks that would like to see it go further, but based on your direction, Mr. Chairman, to try to resolve, this is what we're left with. I think there's a section 6514 that would have really dealt with the puppy lemon law and strengthened it. That is not included in this substitute due to the lack of agreement at this point in time.
Everybody in agreement with this?
To my understanding, everyone's in agreement now.
Is there any
although
opposition?
Not happy with all the arrangements, in agreement with moving this portion forward.
Is there any opposition to the substitute for Senate Bill 1462? Nobody. All right, there's a motion properly seconded to report the bill. Please open the roll. I didn't need to go to.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, thank you. Senator Obenshain, we're going to move to members because we don't have any other patrons here.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I have Senate Bill 1427 dealing with water and sewer utilities, one of my favorite topics, and I'm glad to be here to talk about it. The bill that I have deals with rate making principles and water and sewer utilities. There are utilities that get large enough that they are able to differentiate among different customers on the basis of different factors, charge higher rates to some customers than others. And the problem and issue that exists are the lack of constraints upon the utility to differentiate between those customers. And what this bill does is it establishes a framework to make sure that they are treated reasonably fairly. It doesn't prevent the utility from charging a higher rate to one class of customers and a lower rate to another class of customers, but it simply provides limits for how you do it. It does a couple of things. Number one, it requires, if you are going to differentiate, a cost of services study. And it requires that the rates be based upon that, the differentiation be based upon that cost of services summary study, so that the study can determine, does it cost more to deliver these services to one class than it does for another?
When you say class, Senator Obenshain, do you mean a community?
Either
one
a community
versus another
or
community?
business versus residential, those kinds of classifications.
Would this bill in any way prohibit if a water company wanted to spread that out across their entire service district? And they didn't want to have one price for one community and one price for another community. Will they still be able to do that globally throughout their whole territory?
I'm going to rely on my phone a friend to correct me if I'm wrong, but in that circumstance, they wouldn't be distinguishing between classes of customers. All right? Okay. So they can treat them equally, but just in the utility business, they are treating customers, they are classifying them and treating them differently. And we don't want to completely upend the framework that is in existence now. We just want to set a couple of parameters. Number one, that cost of services study. Number two, sometimes, say, a commercial customer may contribute a large sum for the construction of sewer and water treatment facilities. And this makes sure that if they do contribute, say, $5 million for the construction of a sewer treatment facility, once it's built, that they don't simply get charged more and say, well, wait a second, aren't you going to give us some credit for the $5 million we put in to pay for this? It requires that some credit be given to them for that contribution. And it builds into this an allowance for, charging more for one customer versus another, but it sets the deviation at 25% above or below what would be required under the cost of services study. It allows them to charge the profit, 9% profit, but then if the cost of services study shows that it costs 10% more to deliver services to Class A than to Class B of customers, it allows you to deviate even up from that 10% and down from that 10% on these two classes of customers. So, Mr. Chairman, if I haven't confused you completely, I'd be more than happy to turn this over to somebody.
Can you not do this already?
Mr. Chair.
Can you not do this already?
Yes, you can. However, the problem is that the utilities have no limits, so they can charge 50% more to one class.
Okay. So this limits it.
This places a limit upon their ability to just say, we're going to stick it to one class and not another. We're going to disregard the contribution that you made to the construction of the facility. It simply requires that they take those factors into consideration and places limits.
All right. Senator McClellan?
Yeah. Senator Obenshain, I understood everything you said except, what is the problem you're trying to solve?
Derek, come on up here. There is a problem.
Okay.
The problem is a particular utility did exactly what I'm describing. A commercial customer paid a significant sum for construction of the facility, and then when they set the rates, they set favorable rates for the residential customers that were way below the cost of service and set a higher rate for the commercial customer and did not take into consideration the contribution that they made to the construction of the facility.
Okay.
Can I phone a friend on this?
And
who
before
can
you, let me
more
ask,
accurately
McClellan.
describe this?
yes, and let me add one more question that your friend may be able to answer as well. Are these rate of return regulated utilities?
These are, I think, yes.
Return on equity. So the guardrails that.
She's a utility lawyer.
Okay. So
Yes.
the guardrails that this legislation would establish relate to return on equity. And so if the
Garrett
utility.
Smith with Great Eastern.
Yeah, Great Eastern Resort Management, we manage Massanutten Resort, and our utility, and I represent other developers as well. Sometimes you'll have water and sewer utility companies that'll establish a commercial, a hospitality, a residential class. What we want to make sure is that in the return on equity, there is not a great differential in those different classes from what the approved return on equity is. So if they go to the State Corporation Commission and get 9% return on equity, but one class is delivering 28 or 30% return on equity, and another class is a negative return on equity, and the class who is providing the subsidy to the other classes is not getting credit for contributions in aid of construction, that's a problem. And so this bill operates by doing two things. It requires a class cost of service study, and it creates a couple of basic requirements. Those studies are fairly common in the industry. What we're asking for is that the study must allocate the cost, the causation cost, okay? So if the commercial customer has to develop a long pipeline and it costs $5 million and the utility pays for it, they're going to be free to capture through their rates enough revenue to pay for that. And that'll provide an opportunity for differential based on cost causation. But if, on the other hand, the customer provides the infrastructure, they should get the credit. And then the return on equity on that should be within these guardrails. We're suggesting 25% above would be a limit and 25% below would be a limit, so that one customer class doesn't subsidize another more than 25% of the approved return on equity.
So just follow-up question, Ms. Chair. So the cap is on the differential between the return on equity between classes, not what the return on equity would be per.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anybody who'd like to speak in support? Or is there any opposition? Maybe I'd ask that question first. Is there any opposition to this? If not,
Nobody has
is there a
spoken to me
motion?
in opposition.
There a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I move the bill be reported.
Second.
Motion properly seconded to report the bill. Clerk, please open the roll. That
13 ayes, 0
finish you
nays.
up? Okay. Senator Hanger, I know you've got somewhere else to be, and you have a bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Ben, make sure he left his proxy. Well, he looks like his laptop's here.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the courtesy here. Senate Bill 1328 deals with stormwater local assistance fund grants programs.
Okay.
And have an amendment to offer to this, Mr. Chairman. And with the amendment, this, I think that will, any concern that anybody had, particularly between those paying attention between the governor's policy people and Virginia municipal stormwater people.
All right. Senator
would be
Hanger offers the
taken
amendment.
care of.
Senator Marsden seconds
Y'all
it.
have,
All
y'all
in favor,
have this?
please say aye.
You got it? Okay,
Yeah.
good, okay.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
The, Mr. Chairman, the short of the bill, which is supported by the administration, is it would authorize the Department of Environmental Quality to designate a portion of available funding from stormwater grants, commonly referred to as SLAP, for eligible water quality improvements from smaller, largely rural and unregulated localities, which essentially would be those not currently regulated by MS4 permits. And there's a process for that's set out in the bill, and I have some people that could speak to that if there are questions on that.
Let's try it this way. Is there any opposition? I think your bill's in good shape, Senator Hanger. No opposition to the bill? Is there a motion? Motion properly seconded to report the bill as amended. Please open the roll.
Can you, let's see, Overton's still up here, I need to go back here. I've got you got it now?
I got you.
Okay.
I did it for you.
I got it now. Yeah, you switched it.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay. Senator Boysko, come on up. I'm sorry, I didn't see you there.
I just got here. I was stuck downstairs. Thank you so
And
much.
you have
SB 1745.
1745?
Yes, sir.
All right, tell us what your bill does.
Great. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, SB 1745 would create permitting assistance, a permitting assistance fund. This fund will assist residents of communities affected by construction projects and facilities seeking permit changes from the State Water Control Board, the State Air Pollution Control Board, and the Virginia Waste Management Board. The fund would allow groups of individuals who are proximately affected by a permit action to request a grant. This past year, I held a couple of town halls on environmental issues, including a panel discussion with representatives of environmental groups, renewable energy groups, and the utility companies to discuss the variety of large infrastructure projects. I've also had a conversation with the woman who is known as Red Terry, who spent 5 weeks camped in a tree. And her concerns really touched me as someone whose land is being used for an infrastructure project, and how her real concern was of, losing safe water and clean air in her community. And so at the request of constituents in the environmental groups, I have followed what's been going on at the State Water Control Board and the State Air Pollution Control Board meetings. And at these meetings, it is clear that there's great frustration on the part of the people filling those rooms, often those overflow rooms. And we've seen them, where they get very agitated and angry because they don't really understand what's going on and they feel like they're not being heard. At one of the meetings, the comments submitted by members of the public were listed on a presentation slide. And then they were dismissed because they didn't put in the correct technical information. And so they just broke into, really anger, shouting frustration. We don't know how to submit the comments with the technical information. We don't know how one would even do that. And so this bill is offering, the spirit is to offer a step towards providing community members with the information they need to participate in a meaningful way during those public comment hearings. This isn't a new concept, actually. The technical assistance grants have been used at the federal level, specifically around the Superfund sites to help localities have the ability to make statements that would be appropriate. And it's also happened in some states as well. There are specifically right now some GoFundMe fundraising campaigns to provide resources for the families who are and will be affected by these infrastructure projects and families using their limited personal own resources. I think we can do better. This permitting assistance fund would empower people to hire experts who could help them submit comments that would be appropriate during the public comment period. During the process of vetting the bill, I have heard from people. I've talked to the Farm Bureau and an attorney with clients who need permits for water infrastructure projects. They expressed to me concern about the lack of control regarding the kind of information or guidance that groups are able to seek. They suggested that perhaps a better idea might be working through the Department of Environmental Quality Ombudsman. But I think that the ongoing efforts at DEQ and the soil and water districts and cooperative extensions who are working to facilitate community relationships are really good and deserving of the funding that they're seeking. But I also believe that empowering communities to hire their own experts might be the right thing to do. I trust that, they're doing this in the right spirit. And when people are able to tell their stories appropriately and effectively to the people who are making the policy, everybody's going to benefit. Many of the businesses seeking these permits will be part of the community for years and years, and they, the wisdom of the people affected is invaluable. Nobody should feel like they're powerless in their own community as things are changing because they don't have the money. And so I'm saying this would be a modest step to ensure that our government is working for everyone and everyone has access to communicating effectively and appropriately. And I hope it's the pleasure of the committee to report SB 1745 to the Senate.
How do you pay for this?
It would be done through the permitting fees.
You're adding an additional amount to the permitting fees, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right,
So-
any questions of Senator Boysko? So Senator Chafin.
Senator Boysko, who are these groups? Are any of them identified that would be intended recipients of these funds?
I actually just, Chris McDonald with the Virginia Association of Counties is here as someone who thinks this is an interesting concept. If you would let him, would you mind if he? Talk?
I'll be happy to hear from him.
Okay.
Mr.
Chairman.
Senator Chafin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Chafin, my name is Chris McDonald. I represent the Virginia Association of Counties. Of growing concern to a number of our localities has been understanding and actually working through the permitting processes for a lot of water quality and infrastructure projects. As such, it's grown to such an issue that we actually adopted a position in favor of seeking additional funding and programming for technical assistance, both for education and compliance with these permits. So we do support this legislation.
Further question for the paper?
Senator Chafin.
So Senator Boysko, I mean, what we're talking about here is using these monies to, to protest or fight permitted projects. Am I right about that?
Well, actually, what it is, you know, I think there were like 10,000 submitted comments to some of these projects. And most of them were dismissed because they weren't done correctly. Just allowing somebody to understand how to put the information in, that's the intention here. It's not to try to derail a project, but it's just to let people have some help in putting in the proper information so that it could be taken into perspective. Instead of having a room full of angry folks who have been fruitlessly trying to share their concerns and then have them dismissed because they didn't, you know, do it exactly correctly. So it's not intended in any way to disrupt the process. It's actually supposed to smooth things out. So with the Superfund sites that, you know, in the 80s and the 90s, I actually worked on some of that stuff legislatively, but my aide actually was an attorney for the EPA, and she was there watching how these technical assistance grants helped the people in the communities feel more empowered. Whether it changed the outcome or not is not so much the intent here. It's just to make sure that people know how to use their voices properly so that they can be heard. Does that make sense to you?
Further question.
Senator
So
Chafin.
is there, who would create the guidelines and the infrastructure and make the decisions of who gets the money? Who gets the money and where's the money go and for what projects is the money used for to explain or pose?
Sure. So the fund would be put together by the excuse me just a second. I mean, Governor Northam has started, you know, a new effort to
Do you want to help with that, Dave?
Senator Chafin, the bill directs DEQ to develop regulations for this.
I believe those are all the questions.
All right. Anybody else have any other questions of the patron? Senator Boysko, do you have anybody like speak in favor?
Well, we had.
You already, okay. Is there any Anybody else? If not, is there anybody opposed to the bill? Come on up, please. Not to rush you, but we've still got like 9 bills to do today.
Thank you, and I appreciate Senator Boysko expressing some of our concerns. She summarized it very, very well. But I think that our challenge is there's really no parameters around this, and we know that there are groups out there that purport to offer technical assistance, and it's wrong information. And that's why we suggested to the senator that soil and water conservation districts from farmers, and I know her issue is much broader than farmers, but from our perspective, because it touches on farmers, soil and water conservation districts and cooperative extension, and we're fighting for funding for both of those programs to offer that technical assistance. So I guess I would like to see what other opportunities come out of the governor's executive order 6 that we participated in discussions with DEQ this summer to try and resolve some of this. So I don't say that her issue is not warranted. I just think perhaps there's some other solutions besides these grants that may not have a lot of controls and protections around them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there no one else who wants to speak, no questions, is there a motion?
Second.
Needs to be referred to finance. So that motion is amended to move the bill be reported and re-referred to Senate Finance, properly seconded. Please open the roll.
Four ayes, 10 nays.
Okay. Thank you, Senator
Thanks for the
Boysko.
consideration.
Senator Lewis, you've got some bills as well. I think we're down to 2 members on the committee now. Senator Marsden, while he's walking up, I understand you would like to have Senate Bill 1057, your industrial hemp bill, re-referred to Senate Health and Education. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. I've spoken with Senator Suderline, who runs the appropriate subcommittee there, who, if I'm not mistaken, Senator Suderline is willing to look at this. The difference between my hemp bill and Senator Ruff's, involves a public health issue that is contained in my bill that is not contained in his. Otherwise, the bills are not in conflict, and I think this would be a way of giving the proper amount of time to this very, very concerning health issue around hemp and selling it for medicinal purposes. And so I would so move that we move my bill to to Health and Ed and hopefully assigned to his subcommittee.
Okay. Senator Stanley seconds that.
And Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. And we would need to, Mr. Chairman, adopt substitute. Yeah.
Well, they can enter a substitute there, can't they? Yeah, I think let's just send the bill. They can do the substitute over there since
Thank you, Mr.
we're in the middle of a motion. A motion properly seconded to re-refer Senate Bill 1057 to Health and Education. All in favor, please say aye. Oh, you want a recorded vote on that? Please open the roll. Senator Lewis, which bill would you like to take?
A little bit of housekeeping first, Mr. Chairman. I believe I have Senate Bill 1569 in front of you. It should be on the docket today.
1569, yes, it is on the docket.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to lighten the committee's load a little bit. This bill took some folks by surprise. I don't like to surprise people, and I was surprised that they were surprised. So I think we have an opportunity. It's a problem we have to deal with the Corps in order to qualify for projects. But I think we've got some time to work on that and give people some comfort on it. So I just asked that the committee would consider laying that on the table.
Unfortunately, in the Senate, I think all we can do is PBI, or can you strike it? We can strike it.
That's much more harsh than the House. We gently lay on the table over there. It's just not right.
The House is they're very touchy-feely. We're not. But we can strike it or PBI, whichever you prefer.
Strike it's fine.
Okay. At the request of the patron, Senate Bill 1569 be stricken. Please open the roll.
Fourteen ayes, 0 nays.
You gonna tell me how you vote, Joe? Okay, Senator Lewis, you have more, don't you?
I got 2 more, Mr. Chairman, and we'll take what I hope is the easier of the 2 first, and that's Senate Bill 1599.
1599.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. 1599 deals with what is a fragile aquifer on the eastern shore, the Yorktown Aquifer. It's a confined aquifer. We're having some issues with potential saltwater intrusion. We're having a lot of withdrawals from that.
Can I interrupt you?
Yes.
Is there anybody who opposes this?
Oh, thank God.
I can't imagine, but is there anybody that opposes Senate Bill
That's why you're the chairman, Mr. Chairman.
1599? Senator Stanley seconds. Motion properly seconded to report Senate Bill, I'm just making sure it doesn't have, no, it does not. To report the bill, please open the roll. Okay, moving right along.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
12 ayes, 0 nays.
This next one is 1666. And
All right, tell us about Reggie.
Well, actually, Mr. Chairman, I've got an amendment in the nature of a substitute, I think, that I'd like to distribute and move. And
Thank you. Senator Stanley moves and Senator Mason seconds the adoption of substitute. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it.
And really, Mr. Chairman, don't want to disappoint those of you who are looking forward to spending cocktail hour talking about the efficacy and efficiency of trading carbon emissions, but the amendment in the nature of substitute really gets down to talking about the money. And as I understand it, Mr. Chairman, we are on track through executive order beginning with the McAuliffe administration and now continue through the North administration to develop regulations for allowing the participation in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. We would be the 11th state. I understand those regulations are going to be completed this year. And this, Mr. Chairman, as I further understand it, if we don't do something legislatively, the carbon allowances that will be part of that trading regime that come through these regulations will go back to the governed entities, the utilities. And so what this does is give the legislature a chance to opine on where that money should go and how it should be distributed. So when I said it's about the money, it's really about the money. And so if you look at the amendment in the nature of substitute, Mr. Chairman, we're projecting that about $72 million will be generated from these auctions when they occur, or potentially when they occur. The fund creates or renames the Shoreline Resiliency Fund, becomes the Coastal Protection Fund. 77% of the revenue generated from these carbon dioxide emission allowances would go into that fund, and it would be distributed to localities for use in resiliency projects, efforts, and loans and grants. And not less than 10%, Mr. Chairman, not less than 10% would go to the counties enumerated in Section C. Northern Neck, Middle Peninsula, Accomack, Northampton planning districts, and the various counties are spelled out in there. And again, that's not less than 10%. 13%, Mr. Chairman, would go to energy efficiency measures and support energy efficiency programs. I'm sorry, 10%, and then 10% more would go for economic development, education, and workforce trainings in Southwest Virginia. And then 3% of the revenues would be appropriated towards covering the administrative costs of the program. And so that is, in a nutshell, Mr. Chairman, that is it. And again, we're talking about the money. We're taking the legislative prerogative and telling them where we think that money should go, where it should be invested, because we've already decided through executive action that we're going down that path, and that's where we're headed, Mr. Chairman.
I understand you're trying to make us difficult.
Yes, absolutely.
Good for you. Any questions of Senator Lewis on this bill? Do you have folks that would like to speak in support?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Y'all come on up if you want to speak in support, please.
Secretary Strickland.
Mr. Secretary, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Thank you for having me this afternoon. I'll be very brief. I'd like to thank Senator Lewis for patroning this bill on behalf of the governor. Governor Northam is strongly supportive of this legislation. As the senator mentioned, this doesn't have anything to do with regulating carbon dioxide emissions. That rule is already going to go forward under DEQ's authority. It's going to be finalized in March. So we will be getting those carbon reductions through the regional trading program. This bill's only about capturing those revenues and using them for what I think are pretty critical needs in the Commonwealth: coastal protection, energy efficiency, and some help for economic development, education, workforce training for the coal field. So that's about all I have to say about it. Happy to answer any questions that folks have.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Nice to have you here. Yes, ma'am. Please come up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Peggy Sander, Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I'm here to support the bill. It's, in our view, a very important a way to get desperately needed funding for our already threatened coastal communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Dr. Zorbelian. I'm a board-certified internist and rheumatologist, practice in Northern Virginia, here with Virginia Clinicians for Climate Action. I appreciate the bill. I'm strongly in support of it. I think earlier someone had said that the ban on offshore drilling is premature. Reggie, we know its time has come. I'm glad the governor passed it. I also think the funds should go towards building resiliency in communities. We know they're going to be vulnerable to climate changes in the coming years. It's something we need to plan for now.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ben Hoyne with the Virginia Interfaith Center, representing tens of thousands of people of faith from across the Commonwealth. And as people of faith, we strongly believe in caring for our Creator's bounty, including the earth upon which we temporarily walk. This bill would work to cleanse our air, our water, and our holy spirits. The Virginia Interfaith Center and people of faith from all corners of the Commonwealth strongly support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Harrison Wallace. I'm the State Director of the CCAN Action Fund. And among our 20,000 members, we just wanted to say that we appreciate the patron for putting this bill in and trying to protect our coast. As a former resident of Norfolk and a former constituent of the patron, I can say that the 1.6 million people whose lives could be in danger in the next few decades will really appreciate us investing now in saving hundreds of millions of dollars that could come in damage. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Lee Francis, Virginia League of Conservation Voters. We support the bill.
Thank you.
I Walter Check with NRDC. Just want to quickly alleviate any misinformation about costs under this program. In the RGGI states that have had this program, electricity costs have actually declined over time as a result of this due to smart investments such as are proposed under this law. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Steve Carter, Lovejoy with the Virginia Sierra Club, and we support this bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senators, Pat Calvert, Virginia Conservation Network. Want to thank the patron as well as the administration for all of their work in seeing this bill through. We fully support it and hope that you will as well.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Karen Forget, Haven River Now in Virginia Beach, and the Norfolk Environmental Commission. This would provide critically needed funding for our coastal communities, and we fully support it.
All right, thank you. Senator Lewis, I'm sorry. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in opposition to the bill? There being none. There's somebody, you want to finish up? You have questions? Okay. Do you want to finish up, Senator Lewis?
Yeah, just briefly for Mike, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is obviously a practical piece of legislation. We are acknowledging the road we are on. People may take issue with it. People may disagree with it. We are going down that road. By March, we're going to we'll have these regulations in place. We'll be participating in this regional greenhouse gas initiative. This bill talks about where the money goes. If we don't weigh in on where the money goes, it's going back, the allowances and whatever comes from them, we're going back to the producers. So I think it's very important that we take this opportunity. We've got tremendous needs in coastal Virginia, Hampton Roads. We're going to send some of this money to Southwest for important investments out there as well. I think it's very important that we take a stand on where this money should go and acknowledge the reality of where we find ourselves. So that's it, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Senator Lewis. Senator Chafin.
Chairman, I really have a high level of respect for the governor and the Mr. Secretary and the patron, but this bill is wrong-headed. All right, and the reason, there are many reasons why it is, but what it does is takes a region that's already beaten down, that has experienced adverse market trends, that has experienced adverse regulatory actions by both the Commonwealth as well as the federal government, and it seeks to shut down our industries, our energy industries. We're in Southwest Virginia. We are the energy capital of the Commonwealth. We're the area that helps to power the Commonwealth, that has built the You know, the steel, the buildings that have been built throughout this Commonwealth came through the efforts and on the backs of those coal miners. Now, I've got to say that, you know, we should have questions about this from the State Corporation Commission about how much all this is going to cost. We ought to know, instead of people coming in here and telling us, well, it's not going to be as much as what you hear. The State Corporation Commission ought to be answering these questions for us and letting us know how much the average citizen is going to be paying in additional electricity costs in order to satisfy the request to go along with Reggie. And, you know, we've been working hard to diversify our economy in Southwest Virginia, and we've been making headway in it. But our economy still largely relies upon, our economy is still largely relying upon our energy industry. And when you take this bill to destroy an economy of an entire region of Southwest Virginia and then throw us some table scraps at 10%, it's not going to be a good trade. It's not going to be a good trade for us. So, you know, and then on top of that, you know, we also have people who are in some of the lowest income brackets who are living on fixed income, and you're going to run their electricity rates up when they're already having a hard time paying for them. Now, I've got a bill here in a little bit. I want to talk about some of these elderly people and about, you know, that are hard hit and can't afford to heat their homes. And here we are talking about doing something for the environment, you know, on the backs of these people. So I can't describe how strongly I oppose these efforts to shove down Southwest Virginia further. And I'll be opposing the bill.
Okay. Anybody else feel the need to speak to this? If there are no questions, nobody else wishes to address it, is there a motion?
Move to report.
Motion properly seconded to report the bill. Senator Chafin. Is there a second to that? Motion, substitute motion is to pass the bill by indefinitely. Please call the roll. Ooh. I do. I'm going to abstain. I'm going to abstain, Ross, because she didn't tell me how she wanted to vote on that.
8 ayes, 6 nays, 1 abstention.
Thank you, Senator Lewis. We have Senator Ruff's hemp bill, and somebody here that can answer technical questions. Martha, you're here. He had to run to a finance meeting, so I told him we'd try to do this without him. This is the hemp bill that complies with the federal requirements, correct?
Yes.
And
So
just briefly tell us.
So, Mr. Chairman, when the Farm Bill passed in mid-December, and some of the federal statutes that govern production of industrial hemp as well as processing of industrial hemp, Delegate Marshall and Senator Ruff came forward to say we want to make sure that we get a bill, and it has an emergency clause on it to allow us to establish that. We have worked with a lot of...
Excuse me, Senator Peterson moves and Senator Marsden seconds to adopt the substitute. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
And so the provisions of the bill simply allow for the continuation expansion. Senator Dance last year carried bills that allowed for registration for farmers under the existing farm bill. That changed in mid-December. We still maintain that registration system so that we can make sure that people are not using this to produce some type of illegal product. And so all of the provisions within it set up that registration system. The Department of Agriculture is here if there's any specific technical, but that is a general overview and a brief overview.
If the committee's comfortable, I'm just going to ask if there's any opposition to this. Everything I've been told is that the bill's in good shape. Any opposition to this? Is there a motion? Motion properly seconded to, let me make sure this doesn't have to go to finance. It does not. Motion properly seconded to report the bill. Please open the roll. Thank you for standing in for Senator Ruff.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
Senator Mason. Senator Mason? You've got a couple?
Yes, sir. 1414 first, maybe?
14, Senate Bill 1414?
Yes, sir. This bill passed both chambers unanimously last year with one abstention in the other, on the other side, which deals with the SWIFT work that's taking wastewater, treating it to fully drinkable, and then syringing it into the aquifer. What HRSD wants to do is set up an independent monitoring committee that works with Old Dominion and with Virginia Tech. Last year, a separate set of eyes to keep
An
an eye on what's up.
advisory board to look at
Yes,
this?
sir. And what they need is water resources engineer. And that's where we ran into a problem last year. We didn't have the money to pay for it. So this year, HRSD set up a deal with Virginia Department of Health to pay for the position. And that was the only thing standing in the way, Mr. Chairman. So we've brought the structure of the committee back again in this bill.
I think everybody understands this bill. It passed both chambers last year, and I don't think there was any opposition in either chamber. Is there any opposition now? Is there a motion? Do you need
I move
amendments?
to report, Mr. Chairman.
Motion properly seconded to report the bill, Senate Bill 1414. Please open the roll. And I think you had one more.
Yes, sir.
15 ayes, 0 nays.
Well, you got a unanimous vote, Senator
I'm
Mays.
telling
Good
you,
job.
Mr. Chairman.
Good
Skin in
job.
your wake. So this is Senate Bill 1413. This was a consensus bill that came out of a committee, working group that we had all year long, talking about how to try to balance some of the needs of aquaculture versus private landowners versus boaters versus people building docks. And I want to point to a couple of things because we have some folks here that take issue with some of our positions. But first, on line 18, we talk about some discretion as far as where riparian rights would go. But really, the crux to this is on line 35, 36, making the determination that the commissioners shall use the factors already in use in 28.2, 1205, which is public trust doctrine. Here's a spot that some citizens here have a little heartburn over, and that's when it says, and the public benefits of shellfish aquaculture. And so after they came to me with this issue, I polled a bunch of different groups and said, why do we have that in there? If you go back to 1205, it doesn't anywhere reference aquaculture itself. And so there are multiple groups that were a part of this that wanted that language in the bill. Environmental groups, people that are setting up sanctuaries. It's to the benefit of nutrition, of nutrient credits. So, and as well as the industry. So the industry is there as well. But there are multiple groups that we put that language in because, some of our nonprofits and some of our sanctuaries were well represented and at the table as far as the work they're doing with aquaculture. Now, it also takes some fees that you see on line 43, 44, and 45 that you and I have talked about, Mr. Chairman, and does substantially increase them. And here's what we're trying to get at here. So if this room is a 50-acre plot that you're farming and doing aquaculture, we've got people buying the ramp up the side into the door. And then we've got people buying the hallway in the back, or leasing, not buying, I beg your pardon, leasing the area adjacent to big tracts. And so we've got some bad actors out there that are trying to lease small plots of land to inhibit the industry, to, in places, poach off the industry, in places to, take a small amount of money that they pay, and then when you go to them and say, hey, we want to do some aquaculture in this area, in places they're saying, sure, for a large amount of money, we can be happy to work with you and help you. So this was quite a working group back and forth that we've spent all year, and this was the bill that we attempted to come out to try to reduce bad actors and increase some fees.
And I understand, Senator Mason, that there was a lot of work on this, and really you all are trying to address issues regarding competition for sites and people who don't like seeing things, and you did a lot of good work on this.
That's right.
Let's start.
Yeah.
You probably have folks who want to speak to it. Let's hear from your folks that want to speak to it, and then we can go to the opposition on it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for having me back again so soon. Members of the committee, appreciate you having me up again.
We're always happy to have you.
Thank you. As Senator Mason explained, this bill is the product of intensive negotiations among a broad range of stakeholders. I think it'll make a real impact in alleviating some of the conflicts we're seeing between shellfish aquaculture industry users and other users of our tidal waters. We think the fee increases are reasonable, keeping in mind they're spread out over 10 years for any of those top-line numbers. And the public trust doctrine review of the lease applications, I think, will really help as well. So happy to answer any questions about the working group or anything else. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Jay Ford, Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We were privileged to participate in this working group. I think you know most of the players that are about to talk with you, and understand that getting to consensus was quite a feat. And so we support this bill. We're very happy that everyone that came to the table, from conservation, from aquaculture, waterfront landowners, peer construction, marine construction folks, everybody was willing to give a little to get to a positive outcome here. And we think that's crucial. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Zachary Sheldon with the Nature Conservancy. We were also part of the work group, and we appreciate the work that went into finding a consensus, and we support this bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Mike Osterling, Executive Director, Shellfish Growers of Virginia. I was, too, a part of the work group. I'd like to thank the secretary. And I don't know if he's still here. Preston Bryant was our facilitator, and he did a tremendous job keeping us on track. We support all aspects of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is A.J. Erskine. I work for Cowart Seafood, Bevins Oyster Company in the Northern Neck. We grow shellfish, oysters on private ground. I was part of the work group. I appreciate all the effort and time the stakeholders put into this. We support the bill. In particular, what Senator Mason said, the language at the end, public benefits of shellfish aquaculture, and that's in consideration of, with no prioritization, but consideration with the public trust doctrine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me? Oh. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Kim Husky. I work for Ballard Fish and Oyster Company, Cherrystone Aqua Farms on the eastern shore of Virginia. I was also a part of the work group. I'd like to thank Senator Mason. He spent many, many hours learning about shellfish aquaculture. He's done a great job, and we fully support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Karen Forget, Lynn Haven River Now in Virginia Beach. I was also honored to serve on the Governor's Aquaculture Work Group. And as someone who has been in the center of some of these controversies and works with the boating community, with our aquaculture community, with our riparian property owners, and is actively engaged in oyster restoration, we fully support this bill.
Thank you. Are there those that oppose the bill? If now's your opportunity. Come on up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Morgan Moss. I'm a property owner in Gwynns Island in Matthews County. And I have some serious concerns about the aquaculture clam oyster work group. Concerned that the work group was primarily dominated by the seafood industry, and it was not clear to us. We found out about this after it was formed, how the membership was selected, and it took numerous calls to get the membership of the committee to the Secretary's office to get the membership published on the website. We finally got that. And then I finally got through to the confidential assistant to the Secretary of Natural Resources, and this concerns me.
And let me ask you, not to interrupt you, but I respect you and want you to have your say, but this is not really about the work group. It's more about the bill. How do you feel about this bill?
Because we feel like this work group, as it's already been stated, informed this legislation. And I just want to make, and I'll make it very brief. I have a great deal of concern. When I called and talked to this lady, she said work group meetings are not posted and are not open to the public. And I thought, did I hear that correctly? So a day or two later, I called her back and found out it was the same thing. And FOIA requests were ignored, and then the work group's report was released. And it is our belief that stakeholders, the press release that the governor put out, and I kind of paraphrased that, All stakeholders were represented and heard, and conflicts were resolved. I respectfully disagree based on what I just said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Roger Martin. I'm a semi-retired lawyer. I sent a letter to everybody, an email yesterday, giving the background of this controversy. Don't know if y'all have had a chance to look at it. My problem and our problem with the language of the bill is the specific words, the public benefits of shellfish aquaculture. Occurs at lines 36, 37, 77, and 98, 99. And it's worded in a way, says, in making that determination, the commissioner shall consider, one, the factors set out in subsection A of 28.2-1205. We don't have a problem with that. I'll read you that in a second. And two, the public benefits of shellfish aquaculture, as though there are always public benefits to shellfish aquaculture. And I know there's been a lot of happy talk about aquaculture, but these people in Gwynns Island and Matthews County are facing VMRC approval of 5.5 acres of 1,400 black plastic floats, about 4 feet long each, that would eliminate 1/3.
Is that essentially what you oppose? You oppose the cages
That
out?
language. And the reason is the exact question that Senator McClellan asked about another bill. What is the problem you're trying to solve? 28.2-1205.1 already says the commission shall also consider the public and private benefits of the proposed project. This language just talks about the public benefits and identifies a specific type of project. What's in the law now says of the proposed project, and I would suggest implied in that language is, if any, if there are any public benefits or private benefits. This language makes it sound like there are always public benefits, and that's simply not true in all cases.
Okay,
So
thank you.
I would ask that somebody submit an amendment to strike that language, the public benefits of shellfish aquaculture, in the 3 places in which it occurs in this bill. And then we'd have no objection.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir, and we're out of time, but I want you to have an opportunity to register your
Mr. Chairman, I
opposition.
feel bad that I just met these folks last week, so I appreciate just giving me.
No, I want you to have it, but if you would just be brief, I'd appreciate it.
Mr.
because-
Chairman, thank you for giving me the opportunity, and thank you, Senator Mason. I oppose the bill, along with the others behind me, for the reasons Mr. Martin articulated, which is we believe the language that says the public benefits of shellfish aquaculture should be removed from the bill in the 3 places it appears. VMRC already shows too much deference to the industry, to the aquaculture industry, at the expense of homeowners and recreational users of the bay and rivers. And this language will be used by VMRC to show even more deference to the aquaculture industry at the expense of others who want to use the bay for recreational purposes. The bill can stand on its own if that language is removed in the 3 places that it appears.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is David Judson. I'm from Gwynns Island, and I oppose the bill for the reasons that
Same
have
reason?
been stated, yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Joe Atherton. I have a home on Gwynns Island that has been in my family since 1864. The public benefits section of this legislation disturbs me because it doesn't talk about the public detriment. And we are living the public detriment because of VMRC's decision.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Members of the committee, my name's Russ Perkinson. I'm a retiree of the Commonwealth, but I'm speaking as a private citizen now. Having worked 3/4 of my state career on improving water quality in Virginia's Chesapeake Bay and Virginia's rivers through nutrient and sediment reduction. I'm here today to ask for a relatively minor but important modification to Senate Bill 1413. Virginia, along with the other Bay states, its farmers, localities, wastewater treatment plants, and others and landowners have spent billions and endured new regulations to improve water quality in the Bay. This committee is well aware of those costs and efforts. Now that significant progress has been made, let's be careful not to ruin the resource with potentially damaging intensive production practices for shellfish. I generally support shellfish aquaculture when it's done in a responsible manner, one which does not have negative environmental consequences and negative habitat consequences, and not undue impacts on other uses of the resource. Similar to
And
low-impact
Mr. Perkinson, not to
development-
interrupt you, but if you could just
I'll
kind of
move
wrap
along.
up. Yeah,
Similar to low
we
impact-
time these things,
okay.
and it's unfair when one side gets a whole lot more than the other, but I want you to have the opportunity to register your
Understand. My
opposition.
concern is with some very recent production methods that are very intensive, and I think don't necessarily have benefits, may have negative impacts on these things I mentioned. I think we need to address this like we do low-impact development, look for low-impact ways to produce clams and oysters that
Okay.
meet all the objectives. So therefore, I would ask that you either strike that benefits phrase, or you could put the words "and impacts" after the three places benefits appear, and I'd be satisfied with the bill otherwise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Michael Green. I have a place down on the Rappahannock River in the northern neck, and we have the same situation going on there. We had a very hard-fought lease situation with the MRC back in April, where there was a very large lease area, many hundreds of acres, where people from outside the area were coming in to set up these oyster cages. The area has already been documented by VIMS to have extremely heavy now coverage of grasses. That was due to the hard work that Virginia did over the years to get agricultural runoff and municipal runoff under control to eliminate phosphorus and nitrogen in the water. So we're going to take that and we're going to cover it up with cages, which just makes no sense whatsoever. I endorse everything that's been said here.
So you just oppose cases, period?
I oppose cages not only because they would affect the attractiveness of the property in that area, but also the fact that it's going to kill those grasses, which is a foundation of the ecosystem. If I could, one more second. If we do put those cages in these areas where people are thinking about coming down and retiring and want to have families and lives, you're going to take a pound foolish, a penny wise and pound foolish approach to this, and that is that people will stop buying down there, and that will turn into a graveyard. So please just take those words into consideration, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Senator Mason, I've spent a lot of time working on these types of issues, and I appreciate the work you've done, and I really do hear you folks who have the issue with that language in there. And I know Senator Mason, if this bill reports, it'll have a distance to travel. I know that he and the Secretary will work with you all to try to come up with something that makes this more palatable. But I will tell you, raising oysters in the river is probably the best way we can clean it up. And a lot of people don't realize that. So it's very, very important to us. I remember I went to college in Virginia Beach, and I remember what the Lynnhaven River was 35 years ago and what it looks like today. And I know a lot of people object to those cages, but I think they've worked really hard to try to figure out a way to strike some kind of balance. But I would ask you to keep working on it, if you will. If this reports, just keep working on it to try to help find that happy place where everybody can get along.
Well,
as
Mr.
best they
Chairman,
can.
two quick things. If I could build on that point and say that's the professionalism that these folks showed in my office. So I want to keep working with them and try to find something that'll make them more comfortable with that language. I very much appreciate their approach when they came to see me. Secondly, to the last gentleman's point, the governor included money that VIMS would study aquaculture in and around the subaqueous vegetation and the impacts thereof. So we're trying to address that very last point because we're concerned about it as well, Mr. Chairman.
All right. And if this reports, it needs to be re-referred to Senate Finance. So they say. I got a letter. All right.
They'll like that, Mr. Chairman.
If there are no questions, well, that's why I
I'll
told
explain
them
that to them.
it's got a ways to travel yet. And I'm confident that the Secretary and Senator Mason will work with you folks on this.
Thank you all for your input.
Is there a motion on this?
I'll move to report.
Motion properly seconded to report the bill and re-refer to Senate Finance. Please open the roll. Okay. I think we've got Senator Chafin has a bill, and I have two quick bills. So Senator Chafin, go ahead if you want to do yours, and maybe Senator Peterson will do this while I do my bills.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is 1268.
Senate Bill 1268.
This legislation is designed to utilize for the Coalfield counties, monies that are held in two funds by the Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy. The bill has really two components. The first component would establish a Coalfield Elderly Assistance Fund to support the payment of heating bills. I mentioned this earlier in some comments that I made for the elderly, and those would be administered through two different senior citizens funds, senior citizens groups. Currently, the achievement fund at DMME holds monies from checks that have not been cashed. After 5 years, they escheat to the literary fund. These are monies that have been tried to be paid out to landowners.
To the state.
Yeah, and they come back to the state after 5 years. We'd like to redirect those funds to stay in the area in which they were designed to stay to fill the void for many of our elderly citizens. That's about $100,000 is what's involved there. The second part of the bill would establish a Coalfield Region Tourism Fund for monies currently held, again, by DMME in an escrow account of unknown, unlocatable.
Senator Chafin.
Yes.
Is there anybody opposing this?
I'm not aware of anybody opposing.
Is there anybody here that wants to oppose it? It would have to go to Senate Finance.
It's got to go to Finance.
Wait a second. There's a young lady who would like to speak. Yes, ma'am, please come up.
All right, would you go ahead and speak?
And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but let's just hear and see what she has to say.
Absolutely.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Manju Ganariwala. I'm the state treasurer. The administration doesn't have an official position on the bill, but we do have some concerns, policy concerns, some major concerns that I'd like to share with the committee. Just as a quick background, the Department of the Treasury administers the unclaimed property program, which the senator referred to,
right,
where all the abandoned and property goes to, and then the proceeds of unclaimed property program go into the literary fund, and the legislature uses the literary fund monies to fund K-12 expenses, primarily teachers' retirement, funding for schools for computer and safety, computer assistance and safety, school safety, and also low interest school financing loans to local governments. So to the extent that money is redirected from this program coming to unclaimed property program elsewhere, it has an adverse impact on the general fund because monies that literary fund can't pay for K-12 education has to be made up by general fund. So there's a fiscal impact of $3.5 million.
From this bill?
Of this bill. And also the second concern is, as unclaimed property administrator for the unclaimed property program, we speak for the rights of the property owners. The bill extinguishes the rights of those property owners to whom that $3.5 million belongs. They don't have, there's no recourse for them to come and claim their property. If it comes to the unclaimed property program, we hold the property.
Madam, I mean, I'm familiar with a process under the common law called escheat, where if property goes unclaimed after a certain amount of time, it goes back to the sovereign. So why would this be any different? And so we basically have the right to do with it as we wish.
Then the money flows through the unclaimed property program, and unclaimed property program holds the money in perpetuity.
I understand, ma'am, but we're making a policy decision to not go that route. I think that's what Senator Chafin's trying to say. Am I correct?
Yes, yes, you are.
All right.
So my point was that the property owners won't have recourse.
So the administration does not have a position, but those are your concerns?
Right.
Okay.
Those are our concerns.
All right. We appreciate that. If it's appropriate if you want now. Motion properly seconded to report the bill and re-refer to Senate Finance. Please open the roll. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Senator
Mr.
Day.
Chairman, members of the committee.
15 ayes, 0 nays.
Let's see. Senator Peterson, yes.
Okay.
You know how to run this? You do.
I better learn. Okay. Okay.
The gavel. Vote them. All right, you know how to do it. Just call it to order. You done.
All right, Senator Stewart, give your attention to Senator Stewart. Which bill do we have?
Let's do Senate Bill 1271 first, please.
Okay, Senate Bill 1271.
And Mr. Chairman, this actually is an agency bill for the Department of Mines and Minerals and Energy, and they're here still, I hope, yes, to help me if I need it. But what this bill briefly does, it increases the bond requirements for gas and oil wells, which have been stagnant now for 25 years. It clarifies DMME's authority to require additional surety in the likely event of drilling activity in the Taylorsville Basin, which is something near and dear to my heart, and probably some of you all too. And it allows for notices of hearing before the Virginia Gas and Oil Board to be delivered either by postal service or commercial carrier. And I think all the stakeholders have met, and everybody's in agreement with this bill. Is that correct? I don't want to misrepresent that.
Okay. David, come forward.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Senator Stewart. Representing the Virginia Oil and Gas Association, David Clark, and we do not oppose the bill. I did feel like I would be remiss if I didn't indicate to you all that, to my knowledge, these bonds have not been used, and I have confirmed at least in the last 9 years. We think this is a reasonable increase in the bonding requirement, but I think we did want you to know that the industry runs itself very well, and these bonds have not been needed. We did ask for a couple of amendments to the bill that we think are fine with the MME and hope are fine with Senator Stewart, that are just addressing one producer that would be an inordinate.
Do we have anyone that can report those amendments?
Yes.
Counsel, can you report those amendments?
Mr. Chairman, there's just 2 line amendments, both doing the same thing on lines 49 and line 50. Strike the number 100 and insert the number 200. That's on lines 49 and 50.
Okay. All right, why don't we take up anyone move in favor of that amendment? Okay, motion is made and seconded to adopt that amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, any opposed? All right, so that amendment is adopted. What's the next amendment? That's it, okay?
Yeah.
So we're good.
We're good. Thank you.
All right. All right, anything else, Senator Stewart?
If you have any technical questions, I've got help.
Okay.
Other than that, I would make a motion the bill be reported.
All right, but before we do, I'm just going to pretend I'm a real chairman here. Anyone here support the bill that would like to testify? Anybody opposed to the bill that would like to testify? Committee
Mr. Chairman,
make a motion. Yeah.
I don't have any problem with this bill, but I have some real concerns, Mr. Chairman.
With the patron.
No.
With the
What are we
patron.
drilling again, just real quick?
Gas and oil. So these are bonds regarding gas and oil wells, which we don't see much. There's the ability to give some increased surety if we drill in the Taylorsville Basin, which I doubt will ever happen anyway, but there is a possibility of it, which is this region of the world, pretty much east of 95. And then there was another technical stuff.
Okay, we have a question over here from Senator Marsden.
Thank you. So what I gather from this is that this is a disincentive to drill for oil and gas.
Well, I don't think so. The bonds have not been increased for 25 years, and there's a minor adjustment to that.
But
And
it still is a...
It gives them the issue we have in the Taylorsville Basin is we've got the Potomac Aquifer, which sits above it. And so you've got to drill through to get the oil or gas out. Gas, I guess, is what you're really talking about it. So there's an issue there. I have spent way too much time on this issue, and I do believe that I don't think we're ever going to see that happen anyway because we're too close to D.C. and there are a whole lot of other reasons. But this is a little bit of comfort anyway with regard to it.
Yes, sir. Senator Eben.
This doesn't make it any easier or harder to drill. It just says the bond is going to be higher in case there's damage.
It just changes the bond.
Thank you.
I think that's correct, right?
And the notice.
Yes, it would be a slight increase in cost to the producers, but I wouldn't say that, that it's so excessive that it would be a disincentive to
Okay.
drill.
All right, do we have a motion on the bill? All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, vote. Can you vote for me? There you go.
15 ayes, 0 nays.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have another bill, Senator Stewart?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 1725.
Okay.
And this is a duck blind bill, and I don't know how much y'all know about duck blinds, but we had a couple situations in the Northern Neck, which I was familiar with. There's one of the delegates actually had somebody, a few years ago, we allowed offshore blind states.
Can we circulate, do we have a substitute to circulate?
Oh, yes,
Senator?
we do have a substitute, I'm
Can
sorry.
Can I have a second on the substitute? All in favor, say aye. All right, circulate the substitute, please.
A few years ago, we allowed people to hunt out of boats from stakes. You put a stake in the water, and that stake has to be there with a license on it. And if you do that, you can hunt out of a floating blind, which is essentially a boat. We've always had offshore blinds, which you build. But what has happened is, and I don't know how widespread it is, I know of a few instances, but as a riparian owner, if you own land, you can license those areas to hunt before the other folks can come in. And so pretty much what happens is people buy those licenses and they get 500 yards of protection, and they build a lot of times what's called a keep-away blind, even though you're not supposed to, because the law only requires that you build a blind with the intent to hunt it. You don't actually have to hunt it, you just have to intend to hunt it. Sometimes people miss the ability to build their riparian blinds, and folks come along and they take advantage of that and they build a blind. We call them offshore blinds, but what we see is people will come right up on the shore and they'll put their stake right behind somebody's house or right at their front yard or close. And so then you have these conflicts. Delegate Ranson actually had one in front of her house on the Ocomico where the folks were out there shooting. It scared the dickens out of her children. And so basically on, Saturday and Sunday all day, the people who own the land are excluded from enjoying it because the people are out there hunting.
Right.
I had a similar situation this past winter where a gentleman who owned a farm had the same thing happen. He forgot to put his riparian blinds up, and somebody came right along and they put a stake right close to his house on one side and right close to his house on the other side. And it just creates friction. We call them offshore blinds, and all I'm trying to do here is figure out a reasonable area. And I think about and I hunt. This is one thing that I'm old, but I'm still young enough to duck goose hunt. I don't want anybody shooting at me with steel shot any closer than 150 yards. Now, that may be too far, it may be too close, and I really pulled that number out of the air because to me it seemed to be a safe distance to be away from people who are on the land from the folks who are hunting. I received a couple emails from people who asked me if I was sponsoring it, and I've not had a chance to respond to them. I don't know if there's anybody here who opposes it or likes it or anything, but that's the bill.
All right, very good. All persons in favor of Senate Bill 1725, step forward. All persons opposing Senate Bill 1725, step forward. Oh, are you, okay, that gentleman first. Yes, sir. Please state your name. And
Russ Perkinson, I'm a riparian landowner in Middlesex County, Virginia.
You in favor or opposed?
In favor of the bill.
Okay, tell us why.
Honestly, the first time I've seen the bills today, I wasn't going to speak to it, but I came here for other reasons today. And looking at it, there's a couple of blinds offshore our property. And, the thing I like about it, I would probably grant permission to the people, but I would like them to ask permission so I have some say in the exact placement of those. That's why I would support it. Thank you.
Great. Are you around Meacham's Creek or?
Lockley's Creek.
Lockley's Creek.
Lower Rappahannock area.
Okay, all right, very good.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I forgot to add that one part. You can come closer than 150 yards if you just get permission from the
Well, and
landowner.
I was going to say
Yeah.
that's obvious. Yeah, okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Dwayne Adams. I am also a riparian landowner. I'm a waterfowl hunter. I'm also the vice chairman of the Louisiana County Board of Supervisors, so I'm looking at this from several points of view, but I'm opposed to this bill for several reasons. Waterways like the Potomac, the Rappahannock, the James are meant for the public use and enjoyment. This bill gives adjacent property owners the ability to restrict the use of 150 yards of public water. Placing stationary blinds 150 yards from shore, which this bill would encourage, would create a boating and navigational hazard. Current state regulations require stationary blinds to be at a minimum depth level at high tide. By requiring them to be 150 yards offshore, many areas would be limited that you would not be able to place a stationary blind because of the depth of the water. Many waterways that people hunt in Virginia are less than 300 yards wide, so if you would have two landowners on each side, declare this 150-yard buffer, you would basically eliminate access to that part of the waterways.
Let me just interrupt you, sir. You'd have to go to one of the landowners and get permission.
True, you would.
Okay.
But point number one, why would a private landowner, including myself, have the ability to restrict the public's use of the public waterways of Virginia out 150 yards from the shore?
Okay.
This bill still allows for the placement of floating blinds immediately offshore, ultimately undermining its intended purposes of allowing property owners to limit hunting near their shoreline. And this bill would also disrupt the livelihood of guides who are currently running businesses depending on access to public water. Additionally, the thousands of Virginians who have for years enjoyed the tradition of recreational waterfowl hunting would have that right severely curtailed by the restrictions of hundreds of miles of public waterways. Those are my points. The other thing that I'd like to add, I spoke to every one of your offices today, either your secretaries or your LAs, and I just wanted to say how polite and helpful that every one of your offices were, and I appreciate that.
Thank you,
for the
sir.
time, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Question for the patron.
Senator Marston.
Senator Stewart, suppose there's a riparian, and I'm speaking to the 500-yard distance between them, not towards the shore, but between them. Suppose we have three neighbors, each with 150 yards of frontage on the waterway, and the two on the far side, at the far sides of their property, met the 500-yard distance between blinds. One put it on the far end of his property line, one put it at the far end of their property line. The guy in the middle would not be able to put up a duck blind because it would be within 500 yards of his neighbors, even though they're legally 500 yards apart.
A riparian or non-riparian owner?
I would assume riparian.
A riparian owner could. A riparian owner can put a blind anywhere on his property that he wants to, regardless of another riparian owner who has a blind. And they don't even have to have a license if they don't want to. But if they put a license on it, then no non-riparian can come within 500 yards of his blind. I actually, Mr. Chairman, Senator Marsden, I actually think this may alleviate some situations where people put up these keep-away blinds. Because, if you have to go to the landowner and say, hey, I'd like to hunt out here and I'm going to put this blind 100 yards out in the water, that's the point here, is to go from the shore out in the water so you're not shooting in their yard. I think people would be more inclined to say, okay. I don't know, instead of always wanting to, what you see really is landowners who buy the license, put up the blinds, they never hunt them, just so nobody else can hunt in front of their property. So I actually think this could be a good thing at the end of the day that might encourage the ability of more non-riparians or the public to hunt.
All right, Senator Mason. Now get to Senator.
Mr. Chairman, my only question is 150. I know 150 yards. I'm trying to think through the Chickahominy River.
I don't know what the right number is.
Yeah,
I really
I
don't.
just asked. That seems like a lot.
I don't know what the right number is.
Yeah,
I based it on steel shot because steel shot travels a lot farther than lead does, and it'll penetrate, but it really doesn't have the stopping power. So,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes,
did
sir.
make a mistake, and the gentleman was correct. This was supposed to cover offshore blind stakes and offshore blinds, and apparently it was, we just drafted, I don't know how that happened, but we just drafted it for offshore blinds. Is that correct, Scott?
It just says stationary blinds. It's 29.1-345.
Could I make a motion to amend this to include offshore blind stakes?
Stakes.
Yes, stakes.
Okay, can you
That's a
define?
technical term.
Okay,
So
what does it mean?
The offshore blind stake, you literally put a stake in the water.
Right.
And you can tie a boat up to it. It has to have a license on it. And those are the ones that are more problematic than the blinds.
So you're actually lying in the boat.
Right, because the blinds typically are built and they're shooting out towards the water. The stakes kind of move all around and they shoot in every direction.
Okay. So we got a second over here. So we have a motion and a second to have this law also apply to stakes. Council, do you understand that?
Offshore blind stake.
Offshore blind stakes, okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right,
Mr.
it's so
Chairman,
amended.
One more
One other question, Marston.
On line 19, the blind shall be at least 500 yards from any other stationary blind. It doesn't say whether it's off of riparian.
That is existing law.
Existing law.
Existing law, and if it doesn't matter if you're a riparian blind owner. I can have a blind right next to my neighbor's blind on his land. What that affects is non-riparian owners. So if I have a blind on my shore, a non-riparian owner can't put a blind any closer than 500 yards
feet.
to that blind.
And follow up, and I understand
Yes, sir.
that is existing law, but the 150-yard distance wouldn't put anybody's blind in peril because it puts it within 500 yards of something across the river. If you're moving it out that far.
No, it does not, because you can still move it closer with the landowner's permission, and actually, if you would have to stay 500 yards if they have their blind anyway. So this only comes into play when the riparian doesn't put up a blind. And so we're just saying, look, if they don't put up a blind and you as a member of the public come in and put up a blind off that person's land, stay 150 yards off the shore, right in the water, so you're not shooting in their yard.
Okay.
Am I explaining that?
Well, I guess I was, how this impacts the other side of the waterway and owners there. And
we'd have the same 150 yards.
So
You're staying 150 yards away from
either shore. It
Correct.
has to be.
Correct.
And then 500 yards away is existing law for.
That is right.
You
This
can't,
doesn't
you couldn't
affect
locate
that.
one. Okay.
This doesn't affect the
Okay.
500 yards.
All right, everyone understand the 150 yards? Senator Eben?
No, Mr. Chairman, I would just say I haven't been hunted from a blind in at least 55 years, which makes me question.
We need to get you out there.
We'll
We've
get
talked
you out
about
there,
that.
Adam.
You've got to eat the ducks up. What's the narrowest the boats have to navigate? If you put all these, if there are more blinds and they're 150 yards offshore.
I'm sorry, I heard the witness testify to that, and I went back to check with Tom. We actually put in a bill a few years ago. You can have a blind in any depth of water now. There is no restriction. It used to be that you couldn't have it over 8 feet of water. Was that? It couldn't be in more than just under 8 feet. You now can have a blind anywhere. There's no restriction on the depth of water. You're not supposed to put them in the channels because they're a navigation hazard, but you're only hunting for 3 months, part of 3 months out of the year in the winter anyway when there are a lot of boats moving.
Thank you.
Because you only duck hunt when it's really cold.
Okay. All right, I think we've chewed this over pretty closely. Anybody else have any questions? All right, we act by motion.
Move to report.
All right, I got a motion and a second to report the bill.
Fifteen ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
And thank everybody. We've completed our docket.
Awesome.
2 meetings, 40-some.
That's great.
I really appreciate y'all's hard work on this.
Yeah, well, appreciate you taking care of our absence. We were having fun across the hall.
We are finished, aren't we? Yep. We got it done. Good job.